What's good, Rip City? Brendan Slaughter here with you for the Rip City Drive. The Portland Trailblazers are back in action tomorrow night, squaring off with the LA Clippers at Moda Center in a battle for the West's 8th seed. Tip-off is at 7 o'clock. Blazers game day starts at 5 with Chris Burkhart, and Chad Doing will have the pregame at 6 o'clock before the call with Travis Demers at 7. Big game, folks. It doesn't get any bigger. Big, enormous, huge. Get to Moda, support the Trailblazers. The Masters is underway at Augusta, taking a live look at the scores early on. Rory McIlroy, last year's champion, is currently tied for first, -5 under par early here on the first day of Masters action. We'll be catching up with PJ Dave, talk a bit more about that later. In addition to being joined by Michael Holton here in about 20 minutes, some Holton on hoops, and then last hour, Travis Demers, your voice of the Trailblazers, be catching up, talking all things Blazers. And you know me, I'll probably squeeze in a little TV talk as well with Travis. You've got the Rip City Drive with Brendan Slaughter here on a Thursday.
Live from the Coors Light Studios, it's time for the Rip City Drive, hosted by the crazy and often irrational Chad Doing. Coors Light, mountain cold refreshment. Choose chill.
De'Aaron at the three-point line, gets it over to Barnes, back to Fox, lobs it up, Cornet, wow! A Methodist Healthcare assist as Fox finds Cornet. Down to 5, down to 4. Harper, step back, 3 on the way, yes sir! Rattles that one home. D. Harp showing his range, Spurs by 9. Fox, stutter step in the paint, at the foul line, pulls up, banks it in, count the basket and the foul. For De'Aaron Fox. First points to the second quarter, and he'll get an and one. Fox behind his back, slips past Thibault into the corner. Bryant lines up another one. Yes, sir! New career high 17 for Carter Bryant. 5 threes tonight. And you can turn out the lights in the gym here tonight as the Spurs are headed home with a W. 112-101 the final as the Spurs top the Blazers and win the season series 2-1.
They play better than us. Simple like that.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing starts now.
I still felt nerves.
Glad you two guys are in sync here early. Here's the thing about Drew Holiday.
Well, what's going on, Rip City? Brendan Slaughter here with you guys. Hope everyone is having a great Thursday so far, enjoying this fantastic weather that we've got going on in the Pacific Northwest right now. I was looking at my weather as I was coming in. It said it was supposed to be 77 today, and I said, you know, my opinion on Oregon's climate would be a whole lot different, folks. If we could bank on it every year where instead of, typically April showers bring May flowers, and then really it's kind of more rain in May, and then really sometimes you can even get rain into June before it really starts to turn around. We get a couple nice months. Man, if we could bank on this every year, folks, my goodness, I think everybody in the nation would want to live here. Hope everyone's having a great Thursday so far. Brendan Slaughter filling in for Chad Doing. Obviously, you heard Chris Burkhart now yesterday filling in for Chad. Chad taking one more day to rest up the old vocal cords as obviously he lost his voice this week. And obviously, he's wanting to get ready for this massive weekend that's upcoming for the Portland Trailblazers, as the Blazers will be hosting the LA Clippers tomorrow night at Moda Center. We'll be getting into that. We'll be diving into it every which way with Michael Holton starting at 3:20 with Travis Demers at 5:20. I'll be talking in between as well. But yeah, I mean, I think more than anything, the Blazers still have everything in front of them. You heard it there in our open. Trailblazers lost last night to San Antonio, 112-101. Obviously, it was a tough game for the Trailblazers on the heels of a really tough game in Denver. Obviously, you start off on Monday in Denver, a game you absolutely had the opportunity to win. Denver showed why they're a championship contender. They, blitzed you down the end, and they were able to get the game, obviously, in overtime. But that was tough because that was a game where I thought Portland played some of their best basketball of the year. They just couldn't maintain in that fourth quarter. Nevertheless, I would say a bit of an emotional loss. Then you head to San Antonio, and the Blazers were squaring off with the Spurs last night. But you're going to look back, and I think really Portland will look back and realize, this was a game that they wish they could have had. I mean, no Victor Wembanyama, no Stephon Castle in this game. Spurs, as they showed last night, still very deep, very talented, and this is why they've won 61 games this year. But in the grand scheme of things, heading into this game without Castle, without Wemby, you really thought Portland would have been in a position to, ultimately, put a scare to San Antonio and try to get this win. Ultimately, that didn't happen. The Spurs kind of controlled this game. Portland was able to threaten at certain points. Portland actually ended up winning the fourth quarter, 28-24. But every time the Blazers would threaten, kind of get into that, 8, 9, sometimes 5, 6 range, Mitch Johnson Spurs coach call a timeout, reset the stage, and it seemed like San Antonio just had an answer all night for the Trailblazers. They were led by the 29 points from Denny Avdia. He also had 6 rebounds and 6 assists. Elsewhere for the Blazers, 20 from Scoot Henderson, 13, 10, and 6 from Drew Holiday, a double-double in the middle for DC, 11 points, 11 rebounds. But again, you would have liked to have seen DC maybe be a bit more of an offensive force in this game, especially with Wemby out. Nevertheless, you heard it, De'Aaron Fox, he's torched the Blazers a couple times from the Spurs side this year. He had 25 points in this one. Keldon Johnson with 20 off the bench. Carter Bryant, who's not known as a shooter, making 5 3-pointers. I mean, it was just one of those games last night, unfortunately, for the Trailblazers. But the good news is, folks, in the grand scheme of what the Blazers are trying to accomplish in this recent, prism of looking into it, it doesn't mean all that much. Thankfully, the Oklahoma City Thunder took down the LA Clippers last night, so everything we talked about coming into this week is still 100% in play. The matchup between the Blazers and the Clippers at Moda Center tomorrow night is going to determine who gets the 8 seed, who gets the 9 seed. As of right now, folks, the LA Clippers are 41-39. Blazers are 40-40. If the Portland Trailblazers can hand the Clippers their 40th loss, and then, of course, you would need to assume the Blazers have to beat the Kings on Sunday. A little bit less of a pressure-packed scenario there, but you still have to take care of business in this scenario. Then the Clippers, it wouldn't matter what they do in their finale. The Blazers and Clippers, if they finish with the exact same record, if the Blazers win tomorrow, the Blazers get the tiebreaker by way of having a better conference record against that Western Conference than the LA Clippers. So here's the deal, folks. Beat the Clippers tomorrow night at Moda Center. Done. Easy, right? No problem. I mean, the Blazers, you go back to that last game against the LA Clippers, and that was the game that I thought would be tougher in this stretch, having to win on the road in the NBA is never easy, but the Blazers had a huge win, and that was, back on Tuesday, the 31st of March. They got a 114-104 win. Drew Holiday with 30 points in that game, and it's hard to say exactly how this game's going to shake out. The Clippers are going to treat it like a playoff game, and I would assume the Blazers most certainly will as well, based on how they've been, hyping up these matchups against the Clippers. But it's going to come down to execution, and whoever wins that game is going to be the 8th seed and going on the road to face Phoenix on Tuesday, whereas the loser will be locked into the 9 matchup and hosting the Golden State Warriors on Wednesday. So that pretty much resets the stage for where we are. And again, just going back to today, we've got a jam-packed show here in just about 15 minutes, a little bit less than that, actually. We're going to have Michael Holton live in studio. Very excited to catch up with Michael. Last time I filled in for Chad on RCD, I caught up with Michael. Always love the conversation. And really excited to get his thoughts on the Trailblazers. They enter in the final 2 home games, looking to take that 8th spot. And at 4:20, we'll be shifting gears to Georgia and the Masters, to catching up with PGA David Coleman. I haven't caught up with Dave, I want to say, since some of the majors towards the last spring, last summer. So very excited to catch up with Dave. He always has great thoughts on the Masters. I want to get his thoughts, of course, on some of the favorites. Obviously, my favorite golfer, Bryson DeChambeau. I'm very curious to see how he's going to play this year. He finished tied for 5th last year at the Masters, and obviously Rory McIlroy looking for the ever so rare back-to-back at Masters as well. And after day 1, we mentioned he's tied for 1st. We'll go ahead and take a quick look at that once again. Sam Burns leads the way at -5, along with Rory McIlroy. They're both tied for 1st. Elsewhere, some names that we may recognize. Xander Schauffele checking in, tied for 7th, along with Scotty Scheffler. They're both 2 under par. And then, let's see, moving a little bit further down in this one, let's see. Tommy Fleetwood tied for 11th, along with Max Homa. And then Wyndham Clark, 17th. Brooks Koepka down at 17th, along with Jordan Spieth. Those guys are even right now. Again, trying to see if anybody has had a particularly bad first day, and that'd be my guy, Bryson, man. +4, Bryson's tied for 57th right now through his first day of action. Obviously, I'll be looking to see if he moves up. Obviously, your start's pretty key at the Masters, too. But that's pretty much where everything's are right now. But nevertheless, we'll be keeping an eye to see how that continues to go. We'll be catching up with Dave and getting his thoughts on the Masters as well. So certainly excited for that as well. And then at finally, 5:20, we're going to be catching up with your voice of the Trailblazers, Travis Demers, my guy, TD. Appreciate TD. Heard he got in on the red eye last night with the team back from San Antonio. And obviously, home stretch. Blazers still got 2 more games, and Travis was nice enough to jump on with us at 5:20. So very excited. We're going to be talking Blazers. We're going to be talking playoffs. And then, of course, because Travis and I have the same brain when it comes to entertainment and TV watching. I got to get his thoughts. You know, if you've been listening to me, folks, you know I'm all about everything on Paramount Plus. That's something that Travis and I have in common. We've even looped in Chad a little bit because I know Chad started to watch Landman, Tulsa King, some of the other shows from the great mind of Taylor Sheridan that I certainly enjoy. And Travis, you know, I want to get his thoughts on if he's caught the new show, The Madison, that's come out with Kurt Russell, Michelle Pfeiffer, if he's caught the new Casey show with Luke Grimes, Y. Marshall's on CBS, or even the new one that's coming out, Dutton Ranch, next month. So Travis and I are certainly simpatico when it comes to that. And again, Travis is always someone who likes to watch TV on those plane rides. So now the Blazers are out of road games. Obviously, we'll see. But I'm curious to see where Travis's thoughts are on these Trailblazers. They enter in the final 2 games of the regular season and the homestand, and then get ready for wherever they're going to be in the play-in and try to make a charge towards that playoff berth. And man, it's exciting because for the first time in, you know, a handful of years, folks, the Blazers are going to be part of the playoff discussion. I mean, right now, you know, sure, could the Blazers just make the play-in and that's it, and, you know, that's the best? That could happen. That's entirely possible. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No. If you're going to ask me right now where my gut tells me they're going to beat the Clippers tomorrow. And my gut tells me they're going to get that 8th seed. Now, you set up that 7-8 matchup against the Phoenix Suns, 1 win, and you're in for the 7 seed, and you really just need to win 1 game to get in, period. But I don't know. I've got a sneaking suspicion that Portland's going to play particularly well against the Clippers at home tomorrow. I think they all know what's at stake. I think Moda's going to be packed. If you haven't got your tickets, you can head to trailblazers.com and get them because Moda needs to be packed because, again, folks, this is the playoffs. And I think back to the glory years with Dame, and I was in college for a lot of those years, and there was nothing more fun for my buddy Keenan and I, a couple other of our friends as well, when we could, you know, scrape together a few bucks, hit up that Trailblazer student pass, and get up to Portland for some Blazer games when Dame and CJ and the whole team were just, you know, at the peak of their powers in those late 2010s. And every year, without reservation, my buddy and I would be like, you know, we have to get to 1 playoff game. And it didn't matter whether, you know, the year the Blazers were the 8th seed and lost to the Warriors in 4 games, or the year that they were, you know, the 3 seed and took down the Thunder, Dame wove them away, and all that. There was, you know, kind of a little bit of a tradition for me and my buddy. And, you know, even going back further, we had tickets for, you know, the first game against the New Orleans Pelicans in 2017. We all know how that series ended up going, too. But there's something about postseason basketball here in Portland and here at the Moda Center and here in Rip City that is just special. And I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, Blazers are going to get in the playoffs. They're going to upset the Spurs or the Thunder. No, I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think the team, depending on the matchup, I think you'd be lucky to, you know, find yourself in a gentleman's sweep type of situation because the Spurs and Thunder are elite. Now, all that to be said, I think it'd be valuable, absolutely valuable on this, you know, that faux pick to Chicago is both ways on this. You know, that faux pick to Chicago is still out there. Thanks, Ghost of Neil O'Shea. Appreciate that. But that pick is still just floating away until the Blazers make the playoffs. And because of that, it just kind of keeps getting kicked down the road. I think it'd be a good kind of dual-factored thing for the Blazers to not only get the experience of getting into the playoff. They send away that pick. It goes to Chicago. It probably lands at 14 or wherever, you know, it is at the back end of the lottery. And then the Blazers get playoff experience. Then all their first-round picks from here on out fully unencumbered to that pick from Chicago. So that's just Brendan's 2 cents. But nevertheless, I would like to see them take down the Clippers, which I think they will tomorrow. That's my thoughts right now. And then take down the Kings, get that 8 seed. And, man, maybe you go down to Phoenix. You take down the Suns, and you get in as the 7 seed. Coming into this year, if we had told you, hey, Portland's got a chance to be the 7 or 8 seed in the playoffs, I think a lot of us would have taken that considering where they ultimately started. We'll go ahead and take a quick break here on Rip City Drive. When we come back, we'll be joined live here in studio with Michael Holton on Hoops. Excited to have a conversation with Michael, dive into the Trailblazers, and much, much more. Let's go ahead and keep it locked right here at Rip City Radio 620. Brendan Slaughter with you. We'll be right back. Welcoming you back into the Rip City Drive here on a Thursday afternoon. Beautiful day here in the Pacific Northwest. Brendan Slaughter here with y'all. Pleased to welcome back to the program a friend of the show and someone I actually had in studio last time I filled in for Chad, Trailblazers analyst Michael Holton. Michael, what's going on, my friend? How are you? For someone who's been in Oregon a while, and I was talking about this with my family for someone who's been in Oregon a while, and I was talking about this with my family the other day. I'm like, if all Aprils were this nice, I feel like Oregon would really be getting up there because, it's usually kind of rainy in April before we start to get into some sunshine. And we've had, I think it was almost 80 earlier this week. I mean, we have been blessed with some great weather.
No, the weather's been great. And to your point, if it was like this year-round or more, everybody would live here. And we'd be so mad about the congestion and the traffic.
We'd be the new California, Michael. No kidding, if it was just 80 degrees in April. But nevertheless, appreciate Michael Holton being here. Rip City Drive, obviously, breaking down the Blazers' recent couple games and then getting you guys ready for the biggest game in years at Moda Center tomorrow night against the LA Clippers. Michael, before we kind of get into that, let's talk about the last two road games. Obviously, frustrating, I think, is the word because, in a way, the Denver game you look at that they could have won, and then you look at the San Antonio game. I don't know if you could have said they could have won, but when you looked at who the Spurs had out, you would have liked to have seen them maybe put a little bit more of a threat into the Spurs in that game.
Yeah, I'd call the road trip experiential.
Sure.
It was a tough trip. You're going to play Denver and San Antonio. You get on a plane, you know that, okay, these are going to be two tough teams to beat in their buildings. And I thought against Denver, the team played really, really, really well. Well enough to win. Really was in command of the game for large stretches. And you look at some of the numbers, 25 made threes, a season high. There were a lot of things that you think if we do these things, we win. What you got to take into consideration this time of year is your opponent. And if you're talking about the top teams in your conference, they're not the top teams after 70-something games by mistake. And they have winning combinations, and they know how to play down the stretch of games. And I thought the Trailblazers had that experience in both of those games. Denver woke up in time to get the W. And I thought San Antonio has played a significant number of games without Wemby, 11-5 in those games. So, they know how to play.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it right on the nail, Michael. I mean, you kind of look at the Denver game. I was shocked at how well they came out, like in a good way. Like, it's like, wow, they're hitting their shots. Things look good. And I kept waiting for that Denver run. And you knew Denver was going to make a run because they've got Jokic and they've got a really good squad. But I look at the last two teams, Michael, and you said it, like, not to say there's no shame because the Spurs and Nuggets are both championship contending teams. You would have liked to see them win, but they're championship caliber squads.
Yeah, and let's just kind of rewind the tape a little bit to what happened down the stretch of the Denver game, or at least one of the things that happened that stood out to me. When you play Denver, Murray and Jokic are the best 1-2, 2-1 combination in the league in terms of assists. They hold both spots, Murray to Jokic, Jokic to Murray.
Crazy.
So that combination is a winning combination and is problematic for everybody every game.
Yeah.
The Blazers defended that combination, I thought, well enough to win. If there was something that happened in that game that stood out to me, like, oh, wow, a game plan, an execution of a game plan that kept either one of those guys from closing the door. And that's there's something to be taken away from that, from a game plan discipline standpoint. The two shots that I thought made the difference were the two jump shots that Aaron Gordon made.
Yep.
He made a three, and then he made a three that was ruled a two, but he made them from the corners. And Jokic and Murray operate in the middle of the floor at the top of the key. So those are the pieces that you take away when I say experiential. Okay, all right, game plan, executed, got that done. Okay, plug that hole. Different hole.
Sure. No, and I think you're 100% spot on, Michael, because you mentioned obviously what they were able to do with Aaron Gordon. Him hitting those 3-pointers was key for them, and you kind of look at it too. I thought in the fourth quarter, I don't know if they were expecting it, but the 9 or 11 points they got from Jonas Valanciunas, like he came in, just dropped in points, and I think hit a 3 too, and was kind of helped get that rally going.
Yeah, and I think he scored 5-7 in a row to start the fourth. So again, the unexpected. So when games happen, I always think about, okay, there's a scouting report and there's the known things about a team.
Sure.
Okay, so let's try to take away these 5 known things about this team. What they do offensively, tendencies, what they do defensively. you don't have Valanciunas on your scouting report.
Right? No, yeah.
Or at least not at the top of your scouting report. You have Aaron Gordon up there, but those are things, again, these aren't excuses. These are why you play the games and why when you get late in the season, when you have pressurized possessions and pressurized games like tomorrow night, the preparation leading up is the shared experience that builds the trust that really fuels the performance.
Sure. And then just building upon, I think there were a lot of similarities in that San Antonio game. I think it's safe to say it was I'll just leave it. It was an interesting whistle last night in that San Antonio game. And obviously we saw Tiago Splitter have some frustrations with that too. And after the game, you could kind of tell in his post game that he was frustrated just with kind of how the game went. But to your point about like other guys showing up, like Carter Bryant last night for San Antonio, right? And Tiago even mentioned like he is not a shooter and he hit 5 threes last night.
Yeah. So I think you have to try to control the things that you can control.
Sure.
Right? You can't control the whistle. And there was a call or two in the Denver game. Jokic grabbed Rob Williams the third, and I was just like, come on, you got to be kidding me. And it's a pivotal possession. Yeah. So those things happen in the game. But the things that I think are important for the Blazers to control is spacing offensively. Because over the course of the year, when there's not proper spacing, the Blazers get stagnant and you're trying to drive against a set defense, or you're dealing with contact in traffic and you don't get the benefit of the doubt. There's a number of things that happen that aren't favorable when the spacing is not ideal.
Catching up with Michael Holton here on the Rip City Drive. Brendan Slaughter here with you guys. Let's go ahead and dive into that matchup tomorrow, Michael. I mean, 8-seed battle against the Clippers at Moda Center. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And, just for you, I'm curious, this is the biggest game at Moda Center since I was trying to answer myself that this playoffs against the Denver in 2021, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not great at historical context in terms of rating moments. I've been broadcasting Blazer games for a long time, and I've been present for a lot of big moments.
Sure.
Dame and the 0.9 second shot against Houston, the OKC walk-off, and the Game 7 winner at Denver to go to the Western Conference Finals. I mean, there's been a lot of big moments, right? And I've been in this role through the 9 consecutive playoff appearances.
Sure.
So there's been a lot of big moments. This is a keep you up at night game. I mean, really, because it's so exciting and it's framed so differently. I mean, the play-in is a new thing, relatively new thing, and you're fighting a team that the game really decides something. And you don't have a lot of head-to-head single elimination games in the NBA outside of the, what do you call it? The cup.
Oh, the cup.
The Emirates Cup. I'm sorry. I want to make sure to give it its proper sponsorship recognition.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I think you're 100% right because, you kind of look at this game and I think, to your point, it's after some lean years, I think this is something that when you combine with like the new ownership taking over, it just adds another layer of energy, Michael. And I think that's the exciting thing because there's a lot of Blazer fans that have been out there, been like hungry for any kind of postseason again.
No, and it's been a solid season, right? And there's been a lot that has happened this season. I mean, from a head coaching standpoint, the way the season started, then there's injuries, there's a change in ownership. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces that have happened this season, and this team is in a position for postseason opportunity.
It's exciting, and I certainly couldn't be more excited. I'm happy the Blazers have this game against the Clippers at Moda Center because I think the toughest matchup with the Clippers, they already got the win down at Intuit Dome. Now you're at home. That's an inherent advantage.
Yeah, and so let's talk about beating the same team twice, so to speak.
Yeah, let's do it.
There's a lot of different ways to look at that. You can say the losing team makes the adjustments, and so how are the Blazers going to adjust to the adjustment? And you can overthink it. At the end of the day. And I had the opportunity to go down and call that game with Kevin Calabro in L.A. It was a big time.
It was awesome. I remember that. You guys were good.
And it was a big time execution of a game plan against the Clippers in general, but Kawhi specifically. Kawhi Leonard is one of those players that is strong enough that he can get to any spot on the floor that he wants to get to, and he prefers mid-range spots.
Right.
So he's going to get to the elbow, he's going to get to the lane, he's going to rise up over anybody, he's going to make those shots. And the Blazers really kept him from dominating that game by shrinking the floor with help and recover defense successfully. And so now can you do that again?
Right. And obviously knowing the Clippers and knowing the mind that Ty Lue is, they will come up with some adjustments on their own. And I'm kind of curious to kind of see. I feel like it's a mini kind of almost playoff game, Michael, in the sense that like maybe throw out, some of the past, trends or lineups. It might be something where, you're laying it all out for this win. And yeah, I mean, I'm curious kind of, you mentioned Kawhi Leonard, and obviously Kawhi is still an all-timer for the way he can still play. But I'm curious, do you think Kawhi is the biggest challenge? Do you think it's, the potential adjustments that Tyronn Lue could make? Do you think it's maybe Brook Lopez's floor spacing that could give the Blazers some issues?
Oh, it's all of the above. It's their bench. It's Benedict Mathurin. I mean, there's a lot of guys on their team that are what I call hard ballers. I mean, they can go get a bucket. So, you can't sell out to stop Kawhi. And so it's really going to be interesting because your game plan discipline has to be rooted in your foundation and your fundamentals. Right. And they defensively starts with pressuring the basketball, guarding the ball. So let's look at the Blazers kind of over the course of the season and how they've done that and when they've played their best basketball. And we can go all the way back to the beginning. I mean, I thought Blake Wesley started this season picking up full court that set the tone for how the Trailblazers got out of the gate this season. And so pressuring the basketball, extending your defense, picking up three-quarter court. Toumani Camara's great at it. Drew Holiday, great at point-of-attack defense.
Yeah.
And you need point-of-attack defense because you need to direct the basketball. Teams that pass it wherever they want to, shoot it wherever they want to.
That's interesting. And kind of building on that, too, I think this I think the matchup, obviously it's a tough matchup for the Blazers because the Clippers, as you mentioned, have guys that can get buckets. The one thing we'll be watching as we get closer is, the status of, a guy like Darius Garland, who's been, day to day. Obviously, the Blazers are kind of in that spot too. Good news there, Michael, is we don't know when, and we're not putting a timeline or anything, but it was some positive news ahead of the San Antonio game to see Vit Krejci and Shaedon Sharpe listed as doubtful. They were ultimately out, but that, you follow the lines of guys who have come back this season. That's the progress, and I'm not sure when, but there for a while we didn't know if we'd see Shaedon again this year, so I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, hey, at this point, more bodies available is better.
Yeah. No, certainly, and just like and each guy brings something different. Obviously, Vit brings, the great three-point shooting, but Michael, you talk about like there's been times recently since the Blazers have gotten back where they're like, hey, maybe they're just missing that guy who can go get a bucket, and Shaedon Sharpe, that's still what he's good.
Well, I guess the new word now is gravity, right?
There you go.
A player that draws the gravity of the defense because that enhances your spacing. And what you want ideally is spacing offensively because you got some guys that can create their own shot, but then you're always going to have guys on the floor that are going to be opportunistic scorers that are going to benefit from a rotated defense and a closeout situation. And you want to have a good shot diet that is healthy for everybody that's on the floor.
Yeah, and going back to that first matchup, or that last matchup, I should say, against the Clippers that you were highlighting, I remember, watching that game, and I believe you and Kevin, as you mentioned, were talking about how the Blazers just seemed to want that game a little bit more than the Clippers, whether it was the 50-50 balls, the energy, hustling after loose balls, whatever it was. And maybe that won't be quite as apparent now as we come to Moda Center. There's, literally 2 games left, and I expect a really tough Clippers squad. But how do the Blazers kind of, you can't say, hey, we shot so great, we're going to shoot again. But how do you come with that kind of same effort and mentality that they did in that first game?
No, therein lies the challenge because against San Antonio had the juice, and they played harder. And Thiago Splitter talked about that after the game, that, hey, they were better tonight. And so, you expect tomorrow night at Moda Center for the Blazers to be fully dialed in. And I always break games down into 3 areas, the 3 E's: energy, effort, and execution. And you expect the Blazers to be on point in all 3 of those areas, but you also expect the Clippers to be on point in all 3 of those areas. And therein lies the excitement of NBA basketball when so much is on the line.
Absolutely. Catching up here with Michael Holton here on the Rip City Drive. Just a couple more questions for Mike before we let him go. But I want to start and highlight Toumani Camara, Michael, because I feel like Toumani recently has kind of known in games like, hey, my team needs me to score. And it seems like not only his three-point shooting, which everyone's been talking about how his stroke's been getting better, he's shooting, but I've noticed the last couple games, his ability to put the ball on the floor and drive to the paint. I think against the Spurs, there was one play, it wasn't a successful drive, but I think just seeing some new things with Toumani Camara as like not just a catch and shoot guy is kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think it's the evolution of respect. Scouting catches up with you in the NBA. Toumani Camara, I thought, was an opportunistic scorer most of this season. In other words, Denny draws two, the Blazers get dribble penetration, his man helps, you kick it out. He's been a spot-up three-point shooter, most of his threes. But then scouting catches up because he's shooting 8 for 11, 9 for 12. He's had incredible games from behind the arc. So now scouting is like, okay, run Toumani off the line. And so there were games when that happened earlier and he seemed uncomfortable or less comfortable.
Sure.
That's not the case today.
Yeah. It's been cool to see because it's just seeing a guy add another thing to his game or show us for the first time is certainly kind of cool. And another guy I wanted to highlight has been Jrue Holiday. I think he has stepped up his game. You talk about what the Blazers acquired, wanting that leader, that grizzled vet for lack of better terms, and I think not only has he provided that, Michael, but just his scoring again. Kind of going back to Toumani at times, I feel like with Shaedon being out, there's been other guys besides Denny who have been like, hey, I got to go get my points if the team needs it. And I think he's been pretty solid at that too.
Jrue Holiday is as good as it gets in terms of a professional. Olympic gold medal, I think a couple of NBA championships. So the pedigree is there. Then he went to a great college, UCLA.
This is true.
Put plug.
You got to get it
shameless plug, right?
You know it, man.
But what he's doing, though, that is standing out to me is he's quarterbacking the game. He's managing the game, his situational awareness. Okay, we need more scoring, or we need a big shot, or we need to rotate the defense. I need to get somebody a touch. But he's had some games, 10 assists, 0 turnovers while he's doing that. It just doesn't happen very often.
It's impressive. And to see, I don't want to be ageist, but for a guy who's 35 years old to still be productive, and that was, a big thing coming in was, hey, the Blazers swapped, Anthony Simons for Jrue Holiday, and nobody really knew, maybe besides the Blazers, of course, but outside was like, how much does Holiday have left in the tank? Because it turns out, quite a bit still.
Oh, tank full.
I love it.
I'm yet to see a young player pick Jrue Holiday up and pressure him in to a bad situation. He's one of those guys that's hard to speed up. When I think of him with respect to that, I think of Brandon Roy. Now, different players.
Yeah.
But Brandon played at a pace that was Brandon Roy's pace, and you couldn't speed him up.
No, yeah. I like that. And again, Michael just dropping in all the great references. But no, just last thing I got for you now, Michael, as we wrap up here in the second hour of the Rip City Drive. Just your expectations for tomorrow. What are you wanting to see from the Trailblazers as, again, just to set the stage for folks that are just listening, all they have to do, you beat the Clippers at home, you beat the Kings at home, you are the 8th seed.
Yeah, I think taking care of the basketball, points off turnovers, that's been the story with this team kind of all year. Yeah. There's been some really bad nights in terms of points off turnovers. And so that's what I'm hoping and looking for, game management. Take care of the basketball, because turnovers, they just create a lot of problems. Live ball turnovers, now you're trying to stop a team in transition. But then the Blazers have not been a big points off turnover team, and they quietly have gotten better at that over the last couple of games. And people tend to not look at that number. Sure. Last game, I think San Antonio had 26 points off the Trailblazers turnovers, but the Blazers, I believe, had 21 off San Antonio's turnovers. I'm just kind of getting numbers out of my head. But 21 points off your opponent's turnovers is a big number. Right.
And I think a big part of that, too, and just to kind of add on to that, Michael, don't want to hold you any longer, but it's like I think that coincidentally coincides with the return of Matisse Thybulle, Blake Wesley to the lineup, because I'm sitting watching games, when you're watching games, and it's just a given. Matisse Thybulle is going to get his hands in the passing lanes. He's going to have a guy run, and it looks like it might even be a foul. No, he just poked it away. His ability to play defense is, and I would throw Blake Wesley in there too, but just Matisse's presence as he's come back has been cool to see too.
Yeah, his leader, because he has so much talent in that area, and some of it's unique. You can't even coach it or teach it, but it gives energy to his teammates because now he creates 3, 4, 5 possessions in transition from live ball steals, and you're out and you're running, and then don't sleep on his offense. Matisse is not somebody that you can leave open out there. He's making plays on the offensive end. So the Blazers have a lot of positive pieces going into tomorrow night's matchup.
Absolutely. And again, you can catch that matchup right here at Rip City Radio. Travis Demers will have the call. Chad Doing pregame at 6. And then Chris Burkhardt will have Blazers game day. Michael Holton, you can catch him on the TV side and the radio side tomorrow as the Blazers will be taking on the Clippers. Michael, I really appreciate the time. Thanks for joining me here in the studio.
Great. I'm going back out into
number 1 here on the Rip City Drive. Number 1 here on the Rip City Drive. welcoming you back into the Rip City Drive here on a Thursday afternoon. Brendan Slaughter here with you guys, wrapping up hour number 1. Big thanks to Michael Holton. Holton on Hoops coming to join us live in studio. Always love the conversations with Michael, and obviously offered some pretty good insight there. I mean, I think there's a lot of things to kind of break down that he talked about. I think, you know, his analysis of the Denver and San Antonio games was spot on. I think, you know, like he said, bit of a learning curve for the Blazers a little bit, because those were 2 championship-level teams and 2 teams that most certainly are going to be factors in the postseason, and the Blazers obviously had an opportunity to beat both but came up short. And then, talking about what a guy like Shaedon Sharpe could bring back in the lineup, and I was actually looking at that to see if, by chance, let's go ahead and do some on-the-fly looking up here and see if the Blazers PR has... They have not yet released an updated injury report. I would expect that some point this evening, usually a day before the Blazers PR account drops what the Blazers injury status is looking like. And that's going to be of high note, folks, because it's a big if, but if the Blazers could get to the postseason with just having Jeremy Grant and Damian Lillard on the injury report, only say Jeremy Grant because I don't necessarily expect him back, in the near term. Again, as we know, he went down with that injury. It was nothing major, nothing super long term, but he's been out with that calf strain, and I don't know if they're going to be, wanting to push that at, this point in the season, what have you. But nevertheless, there's some good news because Shaedon Sharpe, I, at this point, would expect to see him again this season. Will they get him back for the Clippers? Tough to say. Will they get him back for the Kings? Tough to say. But if you're asking by next week when they play the play-in game, if a guy who is doubtful this week, I think there's really good odds the Blazers will have Shaedon Sharpe next week at the very least. And having a guy who is averaging over 20 points a game, it never hurts the situation. Like Michael said, more bodies is never a bad thing for the Trailblazers. So once again, folks, just kind of resetting the stage. Trailblazers sit 40-40, 500 on the year. That's obviously a dramatic improvement from where the Trailblazers have been recently. They are in the postseason discussion. They are locked into a play-in berth, and now it comes down to where they will be. And if they can beat the Clippers at Moda Center tomorrow night, and we talked about it with Michael, there's lots of aspects to it. I think right off the bat, if the Blazers can somehow miss Darius Garland in this matchup, I think that helps. Obviously, he's day-to-day with a toe injury right now. If the Clippers don't have Garland, I would expect them to because, you have to just expect that. But if they don't have Garland, and then you can put a combination of Toumani Camara, Sidi Sissoko, what have you, on Kawhi Leonard and force the rest of the Clippers to beat you. I mean, Michael talked about how before they had a real, drawn-up game plan for how to slow down Kawhi Leonard. Michael talked about all the things that Kawhi does great in the mid-range. It's Kawhi not. He literally can do it all. But the thing we maybe didn't mention, Kawhi's ability to get to the foul line is almost unmatched. When Kawhi gets into the paint and he gets that contact, Kawhi's great at getting and ones as well. So Portland's going to have to be diligent. And I also think the other piece of it is this is where Tiago Splitter and his staff have to guard against being out-coached. And that's not to say that I think they necessarily are or anything like that, but the reality is this. Tiago Splitter is still first-year NBA head coach. Tyronn Lue, NBA champion. Tyronn Lue is one of the best in the NBA when it comes down to X's and O's, drawing things up, having certain defensive looks. I mean, I have a lot of respect for what Ty Lue and what he's done at numerous stops. That all being said, I'm very curious to see the chess match between the two coaches in this game. I think going back to that game earlier in March or at the end of March that we discussed, it wasn't quite as his staff. The Clips are going to treat this like a playoff game too, which is going to create an unbelievable environment in Moda Center. The Clips are going to treat this like a playoff game too, which is going to create an unbelievable environment in Moda Center tomorrow night. Excuse me. In case you haven't, again, still can get your tickets. Head to Trailblazers.com. You can still be at Moda Center. It's going to be absolutely electric on Friday night as the Blazers still look to chase down the 8th seed. We're going to take a quick break here on the Rip City Drive. When we come back, we'll be gearing you guys up for the second hour. We'll be shifting gears, talking a little golf. I've got the Masters on the big TV here in the studio. We're going to be previewing the Masters, taking a look at some fun things the Masters do, that Masters food menu I always got to talk about each and every year. We'll talk about that. Then at 4:20, we'll be catching up with PGA David Coleman here on the Rip City Drive with Brendan Slaughter. seed. Off with the LA Clippers at Moda Center in a battle for the West 8 seed. LA Clippers at Moda Center in a battle for the West 8 seed. Tip-off is at 7 p.m. with Travis Demers. Blazers game day starts at 5 p.m. with Chris Burkhart right here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. And Chad Doing will have the pregame at 6 p.m. before the call with Travis at 7. Big game. Enormous. Huge. Get to Moda and support the Trailblazers. The Masters is underway at Augusta. Taking a look at some of the live scores early on. Sam Burns and Rory McIlroy still tied for first place, -5 under par. Coming up here, just a few moments, we're going to be catching up with PGA Dave, talking some Masters and much, much more. You've got the Rip City Drive with Brendan Slaughter here on a Thursday. And welcoming you back into the Rip City Drive, second hour. Brendan Slaughter here with you guys on this beautiful Thursday afternoon here in the Pacific Northwest. Hope everyone is having a great day so far. Again, Portland Trailblazers was the heavy topic of discussion in the first hour as the Blazers are gearing up for a all-important, the biggest game in Moda Center in years, matchup with the LA Clippers tomorrow night. Make sure to stay locked in for that. If you haven't gotten your tickets, you certainly can. We need to pack Moda, need to create an environment that is awfully difficult for those Los Angeles Clippers to deal with. So again, Brendan Slaughter here with you guys, filling in for Chad Doing today. We got a jam-packed show still ahead of you guys in about 18 minutes. We'll catch up with PGA David Coleman. Excited to get his thoughts on a whole bunch of Masters-related things. It is truthfully the greatest weekend in April, folks, and that is the Masters weekend. And again, it is one of my favorite things to do, and I really stumbled onto a love of golf, at least watching golf. And we had this conversation, if you were tuning in with Chris Burkhart yesterday, you're not going to get me out on the course anytime soon, because if I went with any of my friends, they probably wouldn't be my friends afterwards. Chris and I were talking about how, obviously, of all of us here, Chad is the king golfer. Chris is like, hey, I consider myself to be okay. And I'm like, I consider myself to be nowhere even in anywhere close to your guys' leagues. Now, that being said, it's something I would certainly like to pick up, but during COVID is when I started to really enjoy watching golf on TV. Growing up, it wasn't my favorite thing, and then once I started to have a couple golfers that I liked pulling for and liked rooting for, and then, of course, watching them win a couple, it certainly has made the golf experience and watching golf one of my favorite things, and I really like the Masters, the Green Jacket, Augusta, all the little quirks with Augusta. It's one of those really, really cool and unique places, and I can honestly say probably a 0% chance that I'll ever be at Augusta. But, man, for those who get to go to Augusta, get to experience what it's all about, man, it is pretty darn special. But, again, we just kind of talked about the Masters leaderboard. Again, we can take a closer look. Burns and McIlroy, -5 under par. Jason Day is -3. Patrick Reed is -3. Those guys are tied for third. Xander Schauffele has moved up since we last spoke to you guys. He's now in a tie for 6 at -2 under par with Justin Rose. Tommy Fleetwood comes in tied for 10th, -1. Elsewhere, Max Homa is even. Let's see. Hideki Matsuyama is even as well. Wyndham Clark is even as well. Brooks Koepka even. So Justin Thomas even. And then we go a little bit further down the line. Cameron Young, 34th. And it's been definitely a bit of a tough showing for Bryson DeChambeau, my guy. He's a +4 with a 76 shot in that first round, so he'll have some work to do. But nevertheless, the rarity, right? Rory McIlroy, strong first day. Rory attempting to be one of the rare people to win a Masters back-to-back, and obviously that is an exclusive club. And let's take a look here at the last people who did it. I believe it's Tiger Woods for sure, and again, it's when it actually decides to load up on me here, folks. A little bit of producing on the fly. But again, Rory playing well so far, and I'm excited to see how it all shakes out. And yes, Jack Nicklaus, Nick Faldo, and Tiger Woods have all won the Masters back-to-back. Has not happened since 01-02 with Tiger. So again, that's what's at stake for Rory, man. I think considering how long it took Rory to, kind of get that last major, if he could somehow do back-to-back, that'd be pretty darn cool as well. So we'll see ultimately how that ultimately shakes out. But I said I wanted to talk Masters here, but not just the golf part of it, because, folks, what's the best part of the Masters? Looking at the food menu. And again, gotta love it. The Masters and the prices, right? The Masters food, again, if you are lucky enough to be one of the people or one of the players who plays in the Masters, you get to partake in this awesome menu that they have. And again, we're just going to kind of run through how the Masters concession prices managed to stay pretty much inflation-proof. And again, taking a closer look here at the sandwiches, let's start there. $1.50 gets you an egg salad or pimento cheese sandwich. We obviously know the famous pimento cheese sandwiches along with the egg salad. $3 for a pork barbecue. $3 for savory tomato pie. That's interesting. $3 for a Masters Club. You got to figure that's probably pretty good, too. Chicken salad on honey wheat, $3. Ham and cheese on rye, $3. Or just a classic chicken sandwich, $3. Again, can we get some of those prices up here in the rest of the world? I can't be the only one looking at how expensive the grocery store trips are these days. Taking a look at the breakfast side of things, served until 10 a.m. if you're on the Masters. You get the Masters Blend fresh brewed coffee, $2. Chicken biscuit is $3. As someone who definitely enjoys a good chicken biscuit, I can say that is certainly cheaper than my local Chick-fil-A. Breakfast sandwich, $3. A blueberry muffin, $2.50, and then fresh mixed fruit, $2.50. Goodness, fruit's expensive, and that's pretty darn cheap. Then you get into beverages, just $2 for a soft drink, water, iced tea. Looks like you pay for a little bit more of the premium alcohol, including some Crown, domestic beer, import beer, white wine are all $6. But then you get into the snacks. Apple slices are $1.50. Chips and barbecue chips are $1.50. Masters candy bars $2.25. Southern cheese straws, I'd be down to try some of those for sure. Cookies are $2. Georgia pecan caramel popcorn $2, and a Georgia peach ice cream shake or Georgia peach ice cream sandwich, I should say. Excuse me. And for what it's worth, you can buy the entire menu for $75.75. One of everything, folks. $75.75. That's pretty darn cheap. And again, too bad. That's one of those things I would like to see more of in sport. And, I think there's a few places that do it particularly well. I was enamored not this last summer, but 2 summers ago when I went up to watch the Mariners play, and I took my dog for bark at the park, and I got a chance to see how the Mariners kind of have a few of like what they call their value concessions. And it was the same kind of thing where you could go get $2 beers and $2 pretzels and something like that. I just think in today's world, folks, especially with where things are, if you can make the, ticket prices are going to be ticket prices. But if you can make it so it's not an arm and a leg to eat at games or have a drink at games, I think overall, this is an overarching theme of mine. I think it should be unbelievably affordable. I think it should be so affordable for fans to get concessions at games that they have to ask themselves, well, is it a better deal to sit and, watch the game at home, have some drinks at home, or, go to the game because I can be there and the drinks aren't bad. So I got to say that. Now, again, this is such a limited club. They can do this because they're the Masters. They make money on other things, make money on merchandise, make money on tickets, make money on waiting lists. But nevertheless, I have, Justin Myers, a former host of the Rip City Morning Show, and I used to talk about this, and we love doing it every year, just diving into the Masters prices, taking a look at how really, since I've been doing this 4 or 5 years now, where the pimento cheese sandwich has still not gone up from the crisp $1.50 that it was and has been for some time. And I look up now, and we're seeing a little bit of Scotty Scheffler, and Scotty Scheffler's making some moves too. He's up to number 6, just -2 under par. Obviously, McIlroy and Burns still holding the lead. Patrick Reed at 3rd, -3. But Scotty Scheffler in the featured group I'm watching right now, and always got to watch out for Scotty. You want to talk about the de facto greatest golfer on the planet right now, my pound-for-pound guy? It's Scotty Scheffler, and he's obviously very talented. And someone I would certainly have on my short list to win this thing as well. Like I said, coming into, I was certainly pulling for my guy Bryson. It looks like he's going to have some big-time work to do to be a factor in this one. But at the same token, Bryson's style of golf, I've seen it outside of last year where he was able to rally and finish, fifth. Masters and Augusta hasn't always been the kindest course to him, too. So we'll ultimately see what happens there. But then, kind of the big news, obviously leading into this was, Tiger Woods and that whole situation. I was kind of, before everything happened, certainly looking forward to seeing Tiger. It's one of those things, man. I'm not going to dive too deep into the nuts and bolts of it. You should have a driver. If you're that rich, Brendan Slaughter would 100% have a driver. I would never, I'd never sully my hands with driving in traffic again if I had that kind of wealth, and then you kind of, avoid those particular situations. But nevertheless, I will say, definitely wishing him the best because, golf and Tiger and the Masters is and just in general, it feels odd not having him there, and obviously, wishing him the best as he gets, the back to, wherever he's trying to get back to exactly. But, it's one of those things where, as we get to the Masters, in years past, even though he had long odds, I always like to, drop a couple bucks on Tigers. Obviously he was such a high pull, and, he's still Tiger, right? It's Augusta. You can still, do some interesting things at Augusta. And it's a course that, we're sitting here right now with Rory McIlroy leading the way. It could be a completely different story on Saturday or Sunday, folks, especially just with how the course can play, how things can change, the infamous collapses that happen at Augusta too, the pressure, the green jacket. I mean, it is real, man. I mean, it's something else. But before we go ahead and take a break here and come back with PJ Dave here in a few moments, let's go ahead and hear from Rory McIlroy. He spoke a little bit before the start of the Masters, but let's go ahead and start here and talk about the Masters dinner where he was able to select his choices.
People keep asking me, why didn't you go more Irish? And I said, because I want to enjoy the dinner as well.
Good little jab from Rory there. He also talked about feeling much more relaxed entering the Masters this year.
And I think for the past 17 years, I just could not wait for the tournament to start. And this year, I wouldn't care if the tournament never started. So that's sort of the difference. I feel so much more relaxed. I know that I'm going to be coming back here for a lot of years.
Rory McIlroy there talking about feeling more relaxed this year. He also talked about which major has been most productive for him.
Rory, now that you're in possession of all four, I'm curious if you think one of the four majors lends itself in your prime window and maybe beyond to the most opportunity to win or to be the most productive. Is there one that stands out?
I think this one. I think when you've had the experiences that I've had around here, good and bad, I think that can stand to you and you come back. The other major venues, we don't go back to the same place every year. So I think that is something I feel like I'm still young, but I'm very experienced. I've been doing this for a long time. This is my 18th start. I do feel like I've got, another hopefully 10 good shots at this. Not that I don't at the other majors, but I just think that everything here is a little more predictable. The golf course pretty much, there's subtle changes year after year, but the whole locations are always in similar spots. And I just think the more experience you have around this golf course, the better it is. So that's why I think here.
Rory talking there about how which ultimate championship is his favorite out of all the majors, and he obviously highlighted Augusta there, and I'd agree. Not to throw shade on the others, but there's something about that green jacket. There's something about it always being in Augusta each year. Always something about just the way that there's just something special about Augusta, man. Like lock stop, like any other kind of golfing place, I wouldn't be like, I have to get their bucket list. Augusta, man, it ain't gonna happen, but I'd love to get there. It's a bucket list, man. That'd be pretty darn cool. So we'll go ahead and take a quick break here on the Rip City Drive. When we come back, we'll be bringing in Dave Coleman, PJ Dave, talk about the Masters and much, much more. You've got the Rip City Drive. Welcoming you back into the Rip City Drive here on a Thursday afternoon. Brendan Slaughter here with you on this beautiful day here in the Pacific Northwest. Hope everyone is having a fantastic Thursday. Pleased to welcome back to the program someone I'm thrilled to catch up with. It's been too long. PGA Dave back here on the Rip City Drive. Dave, happy Masters to you. How are you, my friend?
Doing good, Brendan. Thanks for having me on, man. Interesting tournament so far.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to get to your thoughts on everything, but I was just thinking, Dave, because obviously it's been a minute since I filled in for Chad, and I was like, darn, I think it's been, a few months since probably last summer I caught up with Dave. How the heck you been, man?
Doing good, man. There's a lot been going on in the world of golf for sure. It's been interesting with some of these guys from LIV going back to the PGA Tour, and, kind of an uncertain tournament coming into this week. Some of the big names, weren't playing great and had injuries. And, they played well today. The golf course is going to be fascinating to see how they set it up tomorrow, because it was gettable somewhat today. But at the same time, Augusta showed how tough it could really play if you're a little bit off.
Oh, most certainly. And you kind of talked about it, Dave. It's obviously been a busy time and, not necessarily the way that they would probably want it, but as a result of a certain, incident, golf, and, a certain person's been very much in the news ahead of this matchup ahead of this tournament, I should say. And obviously Tiger's not there, but nevertheless, early on, how did you kind of think that just getting back into the major swing of things, how do you think so far the vibes have been heading into Augusta just as a whole?
I think, it's been interesting. It's been an interesting year because a lot of guys who, were playing well in some of these tournaments really struggled coming down the stretch, especially in the Florida swing. It just shows how tough it is to win on the PGA Tour, and it shows how deep the PGA Tour is and the challenge of, playing week in and week out there against, the best players on really difficult golf courses. So it just proves that, you've got to be razor sharp. And, if you have a bad day, it can really expose you quickly. So even at these tournaments that aren't as big as the Masters, we saw at the Players' Championship and some of these other events, it's very, very hard to finish off a golf tournament. We can ask Ludwig Aberg about that one for sure, because, it is not easy to win out there, because you need not only a full 72 holes where your physical game is strong, but your mental game has to really be strong and sound to win out there against the world-class competition that is the PGA Tour.
Almost certainly, and obviously playing at Augusta is its own, challenge for certain golfers and what have you. And before we get into kind of who's leading the way, Dave, I want to start with selfishly, what happened to my guy Bryson today? What happened out there?
Well, I think what happened on 11 was he got in the bunker, and, you look at the shots where he was in the bunker, he hit way too far behind the ball. And obviously 11 is a hole where there's been a lot of careers made on that hole. Then there's been some careers that have been broken on that hole, because it's a really, really tough hole. The problem with Bryson is Brendan, he plays with all his clubs are a 7-iron length.
Sure.
When you're trying to hit a short shot, like a bunker shot or a pitch shot or a chip shot, if you've got a shaft that's a 7-iron length, and you're trying to hit, maybe only 5 or 10 yards, that's hard to execute. That's hard to do. So I think at the end of the day, it's not an easy shot under normal circumstances. And then you're playing with, the one-length clubs, which makes it even more challenging. And I just think, to me, that's not Bryson's strength. Bryson's strength is hitting irons a long way as well. And I think he's a good putter. But I think his short game around the greens and his wedge play has never been great for that high of standard, the PGA Tour, LIV, wherever he's played. So I think you have to be, really, really good. You have to get that ball up and down where he was at. That's probably a 1 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10 shot. And, he compounded his mistakes then, and you make a 7 there. I don't want to say he's out of it, but he's going to need something really good tomorrow to get back in it.
Almost certainly. And that was kind of my big thing with him is I think you mentioned there, Dave, a lot of reasons why historically in his matchups at Augusta, Bryson wasn't as effective as he was maybe at some of the other majors. But then last year with that top 5 finish here at the Masters, I was like, okay, maybe he kind of figured out Augusta a little bit, and then he has a tough showing today, obviously. But you're right. He obviously would need to pull something out to get back up. But we got to start with who's leading after day one, Dave. And again, it's early. But Rory McIlroy currently tied for the lead along with Sam Burns at -5. And again, it's so rare. It hasn't happened in, I believe it's 0001 or 0102 at Tiger Woods to repeat at the Masters. And at least after day one, Rory's at least keeping his odds alive.
Yeah, Rory had a great day, man. I think the big thing with Rory is, he looks at it like, hey, the pressure's off me in a lot of ways, and now I can just go play golf. So I think Rory, to me, is very dangerous. He's very much going to be a factor in this tournament, and the greens and the golf course is going to get a lot firmer. And I think Rory, that doesn't bother him one bit because, let's face it, he grew up in Ireland, Northern Ireland, playing on links courses where it was firm and fast, and plus he hits it a million miles in the air. So if the greens get firm, I mean, he hits a 5 or 6 iron like, some guys hit a 9 iron. So the reality is Rory, has got that, David Duval talked about it yesterday. He's got that great launch angle with the driver where it doesn't have a lot of spin. And then the big thing Duval and some of the commentators on ESPN were saying yesterday is the descent angle when you come into the green where the ball is going to hit very soft, and it's going to favor a guy like Rory who can hit those irons way up in the air. Huge advantage for a guy like that, and playing almost somewhat with house money now. The fact that he, isn't trying to catch, go for the career Grand Slam, that's off the table now, and he can just go out there and just freewheel it and just play golf.
Catching up with Dave Coleman, PGA Dave here on the Rip City Drive. Tell me a little bit about Sam Burns, the American tied with Rory right now. Can't say I was too familiar with the LSU product before this weekend.
Great player, a guy that's played on the Ryder Cup a few years ago.
Okay.
A guy that has had a good, a really good career so far. He's a guy that is won at some tougher golf courses. I think people probably expected a little more out of him at this point, but he's always been made the FedEx Cup playoffs, and he's been in the Tour Championship, so he's been very consistent. I think for probably the biggest thing is he hasn't really put himself in the hunt too much in major championships. I think that's why he's unfamiliar to people like yourself. But I think he's a guy that there's no doubt the talent has always been there. He's definitely very confident. One thing I remember when he first came out on the tour a little bit under a decade ago, he was paired with Tiger on the last day of the old Honda Classic.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, hey, all the fans came to watch me. They didn't come to watch Tiger. So
I love it.
He's a confident guy. He's a guy, I want to say he's probably about the same age as Scheffler and JT and those guys. So he's kind of had, obviously to live up to those expectations is not easy, but he's definitely a very, very confident player, solid player, a guy that, hits it plenty far enough, and his iron play is definitely good enough, to contend on a course like Augusta. But at the same time, the pressure of being in the hunt there at Augusta is not easy. So the reality is you've got to bring it for 72 holes, because if you have one mental lapse, it's going to catch up to you real quickly on that golf course.
Almost certainly. And I believe, we've talked about it, Dave, the famous Sunday collapse, right, at the Masters, and those guys who, necessarily can't hold on to it after having a couple 3 days. Like it is, all four days for a reason, but, kind of going down as well. I want to get your thoughts on Scotty Scheffler. He's tied for 6th along with Justin Rose, Xander Schauffele, and Shane Lowry. Again, I still think pound for pound, I think it's pretty tough to bet against Scotty in any kind of a situation. He's just that good, and it wouldn't surprise me to see Scotty wearing that green jacket at the end of the weekend either.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt. I think Scheffler had a very good day, very effective, kind of like what we remember Tiger playing like back in the day when he would play in the major championships. The first day at a major, Brendan, has always been hey, you can't win it on the first day, but you definitely can lose it. And he played a really sound round of golf there, especially there at 18 when he hit it in the bunker left, knocked it up on the green, made a great 2-putt for par. So I think that's the one thing about Scheffler. He's super patient. He'll take his time. He's not a guy that's going to beat himself, and there's no doubt he's going to be a factor, coming in. There's no doubt coming into this weekend he's going to be there, and nobody's going to really to really beat Scotty Scheffler, he's in the hunt. You're going to have to play your best because Scheffler's got a lot of experience at this course, and obviously the pedigree of winning majors, the PGA Championship last year, the British Open as well. I mean, he's a U.S. Open away for having the career Grand Slam. So Scheffler to me is, a guy that's an all-time talent, and he's got a great caddy too. I mean, Ted Scott is a guy that has won 4 times there at Augusta. He won twice with Bubba Watson. So there's no doubt that he's got a caddy that knows this course really well. And I think, to me, that veteran experience on this course is going to pay a lot of dividends for Scheffler this weekend.
Catching up with PGA Dave Coleman here on the Rip City Drive. Just a couple more questions for you, Dave. Really appreciate your time as we're talking with the Masters. Obviously, day one, mostly in the books now. But I'm curious with maybe somebody, we already talked about Bryson's pretty rough day, but name me a couple other guys who maybe didn't have the ideal first day that you still really like in this tournament.
I think it's interesting to see how far back is too far back. I think the one guy that a lot of people are kind of high on right now is Akshay Bhatia because he won at Bay Hill, which is almost like a major type setup. A few weeks ago, he shot 1 over today. And Akshay is a guy that statistically is near the top on the PGA Tour with a lot of things that he does, ball striking, putting. So I think a lot of people are expecting a lot out of Akshay Bhatia. Russell Henley's another guy that a lot of people have kind of said, hey, he's a guy that could definitely, win a major championship because he's kind of that point-to-point type plotter. He's not a bomber, but he hits it plenty far enough. He doesn't miss too many fairways, and he doesn't get too high or too low. He never really beats himself. And I think there's no doubt that, Russell Henley's a guy that, he's been in Ryder Cups. He's been, he's been around the block too, where he's won on some challenging golf courses that are demanding. So there's no doubt. I think Russell Henley, he could shoot something like 70 or 69 tomorrow. Man, he could be a sneaky pick for the weekend. So those would be 2 guys I'd keep an eye on, just because when you win on tough golf courses, to me, that gives you the confidence in a major championship that, hey, I can step up no matter how hard it is and play against the best on conditions that are going to be really, really dicey at times.
Oh, most certainly. I couldn't agree more. And kind of going along with that and kind of the other way, is there anybody who's up in kind of that top, 17 early on that may be surprising you a little bit, Dave, that you maybe think, hey, they could put a run into this too?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest surprise would be Kurt Kitayama right now. I'm interested to see, too, how Shane Lowry plays. Shane Lowry's a guy that, had a great chance to win PGA National at the Cognizant Classic several weeks ago, and he just blew it. He was one of those guys in the Florida swing, that 54-hole leader who just choked on a Sunday. So I'm curious to see how he holds up. He's a guy that's won a major before, but where's he at mentally? Because, obviously there's going to be some demons kicking around in his head. And I think the guy that's fascinating is Jacob Bridgman. Jacob Bridgman, here's a kid that won at Riviera, hung on to win. It was a tough final day, but, man, him and Chris Gotterup as well. Both of these guys are young guys that have really, come along very quickly, out of college golf. Gotterup played at Oklahoma. Bridgman played at Clemson. And these guys both really have shown that, they didn't need a lot of seasoning to get out there. Once they got out there, they proved that they were ready for the big time right away. So I think that's the fascinating thing, that, you got some guys that are young and maybe a little bit, hey, they might not have the experience, but you know what they don't know is they can be aggressive. They don't have that scar tissue that these other guys have got. So it'll be fun to see, how those guys hold up, because they have played really well early this season on the PGA Tour.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Catching up with PGA Dave. Dave, just one last question for you as we appreciate your time and thanks for jumping on to talk some Masters. I always feel like I know more about the golf game after you and I's conversations, but one thing that caught my eye, and it does every year, Dave, and I can't be the only person with this, and it's looking at how those Masters concessions food prices just avoid inflation. And I saw that you could buy one thing on the entire menu for like $75. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to ever be in line to get tickets to the Masters Day, but man, if you could get to the Masters, man, and be a patron and have you'd be eating like a king.
Yeah, you're not kidding, man. I mean, you compare that to other major championships
Right.
in golf. And you compare that to other PGA Tour events or even LPGA Tour events I've been to. It's crazy, man, how good the prices are there. It just shows what a special, unique place it is. That they're able to pull that off. I mean, I bet if you went to the tour event next week over at Harbor Town on the Hilton Head Island, you'd probably be paying double or triple the price
right.
For that. And it's crazy. Yeah, it's nuts that they're able to keep the food and the prices that realistic. And a lot of from what I've heard from people who've gone. I've got a buddy of mine who goes every year.
Oh, that's awesome.
He just says the food is unbelievable.
Oh.
And you're right. You're not paying that much. And here's the other thing too: is like you could eat there because you can imagine how crowded the restaurants have got to be there this week. A place like
Sure.
Top Golf, where John Daly is situated at selling his merchandise. You can imagine how busy those places are. So if you go there and eat, and you got tickets to go. I mean, you're getting a heck of a bang for your buck. So, I mean, a lot of credit to Augusta, too. It's just such a different feeling because there's no cell phones there.
Right.
It's so unique, and it's such a different vibe than any other sporting event really in the world. And plus, it is the same course every year. Now, it doesn't play the same.
Sure.
As, we've heard from a lot of people, including Jack Nicklaus said that this morning. I heard on Pete on Sirius XM. But the reality is, man, I mean, this place is different. It's unique. It's special. And that's why you could see why Rory last year when he won, dude, that really meant something to him.
Yeah.
I mean, Rory's won a lot of big tournaments over his career, other majors. He's won some big ones on the PGA Tour over in Europe. He never had that emotion when he won that. I mean, so that showed how important that was for him. And, it just shows how unique and special the place is.
Oh, it certainly is. And I wholeheartedly agree with you, Dave. Augusta and something about that green jacket, it is just special. Dave, I appreciate your time. I'll let you run, but thanks again for jumping on and looking forward to our next conversation, my friend.
You got it, man. Yeah, looking forward to talking about it on Monday. I think it's going to be a fascinating weekend. I think the course is going to get real firm and fast, and I think it's going to play tough. And I think somewhere between 5 and 8 under they want to win, 10 maybe at the best. But Augusta, today was sort of the day to get it. And maybe Sunday we'll have some fun pins where you can make some eagles and birdies. But I think the next couple days you're going to have to really bring it. And some scores around even par are going to look really nice.
Couldn't agree more. It's going to be some awesome golf this weekend. Dave, enjoy the Masters. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us again here on the Rip City Drive.
You got it, man. Have a good night.
You too. Dave Coleman, always love catching up with Dave. It's great. Again, the golf that I learned from Dave. Again, I become a better golf observer by talking to Dave, I tell you folks. Great conversation there. Really excited to see how the Masters shakes out this weekend. Will Rory be the first since Tiger to win back-to-back green jackets? After day one, it'd be pretty hard to bet against him. You've got the Rip City Drive with Brendan Slaughter here on 620 Rip City Radio. Welcoming you back to Rip City Drive here on a Thursday afternoon. Brendan Slaughter here with you guys, filling in for Chad Doing today. He'll be back tomorrow as the Trailblazers take on the LA Clippers of the Rip City Drive before kicking off to Chris Burkhart for Blazers Game Day. And then Chad Doing will be back for Trailblazers pregame, and then Travis Demers, who we're going to talk with here in just about 40 minutes. We'll have the call starting at 7. In case you guys haven't heard, big, enormous, huge game against the LA Clippers tomorrow. And again, it's going to determine who gets the NBA's 8th seed. And again, for Portland, if they can somehow find a way to take down the Clippers at home, beat the Kings at home, they will be the NBA's 8th seed. They will start the NBA play-in on the road Tuesday at Phoenix if they can manage that. If not, they will fall to the 9th seed. They will host the Golden State Warriors on Wednesday. That schedule was dropped this morning. So now it all comes down to whether or not the Trailblazers can take down the LA Clippers at Moda tomorrow. It's going to be electric, folks. I'm excited to see, hopefully, Rip City pack out Moda Center. There's obviously no bigger game than tomorrow night, and obviously with playoffs potentially on the horizon as well. If the Blazers can get in, they need all the support they can get. So if you haven't got tickets, check it out, trailblazers.com, and you can check out Portland's matchups with the Clippers tomorrow and then the Kings on Sunday. But big thanks to Dave Coleman, who joined us there last hour. I feel like I always expand my golf knowledge when we check in with Dave. He is just so detail-oriented when it comes to golf knowledge, him obviously being a former PGA pro himself. That's why we call him PGA Dave. And you know, his analysis and way he breaks down how guys, you know, play a certain course, how a course affects certain guys. You know, I thought his analysis on Bryson, you know, particularly in a place like Augusta where, you know, he's always using that same size club, that's impactful. I mean, and then his analysis on Rory too, just absolutely fantastic. And I think, you know, I really look forward to those conversations this time of year with Dave because, you know, we learn more about the Masters, more about golf. And for me, like I said, learning more about Sam Burns. I didn't know much about Sam Burns or Kurt Kitayama today or, you know, any of the other guys he mentioned as well. So once again, though, Rory McIlroy and Sam Burns tied -5 under par. They shot 67 today. Elsewhere, Xander Schauffele and Scotty Scheffler tied for -2. And again, unfortunately, my guy Bryson DeChambeau going to have some work to do. A +4, shot a 76 today, currently tied for 56 along with Bubba Watson and Jackson Harrington and Johnny Kiefer. So there you go. Bryson's got some work to do, but it is Rory's tournament to lose right now, folks. And I think that's pretty cool because, as we mentioned, Rory could only become the 4th golfer to ever win the Masters back-to-back. Now, that all being said, it's day one. You don't want to make bold over-declarations on day one. But after day one, Rory looking pretty darn solid. Last couple minutes here of this segment, I want to go ahead and switch gears and bring you guys up to speed with what the latest is going on with Oregon State football. Obviously, Oregon State and Jamarcus Shepard into their first spring together. The Beavers are now into their 3rd week of spring practices, just have a couple more weeks left before their spring game on April the 25th. And would highly encourage any Oregon State fans out there to go check out BeaversEdge.com. It's the latest and greatest Oregon State coverage. You can check out the latest from me, Brendan Slaughter, publisher, as well as Ryan Harlan, senior writer, Brogan Slaughter, Dylan Callahan Crowley, the whole crew, as we're providing you guys with the latest and greatest Oregon State coverage. And it's been fascinating early on here in spring as we kind of get to see Jamarcus Shepard and company remake this Oregon State football roster. We obviously know the Beavers got a lot of work to do coming off of a 2-10 season a year ago. We talked about it, Chris Burkhart and I, a little bit on the Rip City Drive yesterday, how Jamarcus Shepard has already talked about, you know, identifying strength and conditioning as an area where Oregon State was deficient previously, talking about how he wants to improve the overall injury prevention, what his tools are for doing that, what he wants to do to help players kind of avoid some of those more soft tissue injuries. And so far, it's been very fascinating. I think Jamarcus Shepard and his staff, you know, time will tell how successful they are on the field at Oregon State. But I can say this, Shepard early on, the vibes are different. They're certainly putting down a new culture, a better culture. And I think it's going to be one that is obviously more successful for Oregon State football. How they ultimately fare in year one, we'll see how all that shakes out. But again, we got daily practice reports, video interviews at the Beavers Edge YouTube channel. If you're wanting to know what the latest and greatest is with Oregon State coverage, make sure to head over to BeaversEdge.com, say hi, jump on the message boards, and I'm looking forward to getting to talk to you guys. But yeah, obviously the Beavers have nowhere to go but up. It was, you know, it was the pits, right? I mean, you go 2-10, the second year of being an independent, and you're basically starting from scratch. And I think so far, the coaches that Shepherd has surrounded himself with, I think, are very smart coaches that are going to be able to get the most out of the guys that are there. I think the recruiting has been more impactful for Oregon State lately. They've been able to bring in, some guys who I think are going to be, difference makers for them. Again, am I expecting, wholesale changes and them to be just world beaters in year one under Shepherd? No, but I think it was very clear that the Beavers needed a hard reset and needed somebody to come in with kind of the I don't even want to say disciplinarian, but just kind of firm hand of Jamarcus Shepherd. He kind of talked about how he's had to challenge the guys in the offseason, challenge the guys now, and continues to kind of put that level of, hey, they want to be coached hard. And I don't mean to, throw the previous regime under the bus, but from what we've heard, maybe they weren't coached quite as hard, and maybe the expectation wasn't quite as the level of what Shepherd's putting down. So I think that's something to certainly keep an eye on as well. And then a little bit later in the program, we'll see if we can find some time to check in and circle back to Oregon State men's basketball as well, folks, because, again, Oregon State men's basketball head coach Justin Joyner, now a national champion. And coming to Oregon State after winning a championship with the Michigan Wolverines. And early on, again, we dropped some potential targets at BeaversEdge.com today. You can go check that out, some portal targets. Justin Joyner is, there's excitement there, folks. And I don't, football, I'm tempering my expectations because it takes a bit. You have to hit the transfer. The expectations early on aren't there. Basketball, it's a little bit different. Like Oregon still, the expectations early on aren't there. Basketball, it's a little bit different. Like Oregon State, sure, they were kind of a 500 team this last year. That's why they moved off of Wayne Tinkle and brought in a new coach and all that jazz. That all being said, because of, that cachet that Joyner has, we've been seeing Oregon State be in the mix for some high-level transfers so far early on. Now we know Oregon State's not going to be the biggest player in NIL or those type of things, but I think Joyner is doing a great job at selling his vision for Corvallis. And we're seeing a lot of kids already be like, hey, that could work. I could see that. And I still think, Oregon State men's basketball has history that the Beavers need to tap into. It ain't going to be too much longer before you need more than just Wikipedia to go back and find out what the Orange Express years were in the 80s. That's still something that can be a huge selling point for Oregon State men's basketball. This was a team that, I grew up on the stories even before my time, and sure, they are a little bit of a has-been in that regard. But I still think that history is there. You can still bring the alumni out. I think Joyner has had a great relationship with Oregon State's alumni. Now you're talking guys like Steve Johnson, Lester Connor, Ray Bloom, Mark Radford, AC Green. We need to see more of those guys. We need to see them more visibly in Corvallis, and I think that's something that Joyner's going to be able to do in addition to building a winning basketball program. We're going to take a quick break here on the Rip City Drive. When we come back, we'll be setting you guys up for the final hour of the program. We'll also be catching up with Travis Demers, your voice of the Trailblazers. What's good, Rip City? Brendan Slaughter here for the Rip City Drive. Final hour. The Portland Trailblazers are back in action tomorrow night, squaring off with the LA Clippers at Moda Center in a battle for the West's 8th seed. Tip-off is at 7 p.m. with Travis Demers. Blazers game day with Chris Burkhart starts at 5 p.m. Chad Dewing will have the Trailblazers pregame at 6 p.m. Big game, huge, enormous. Get to Moda, support the Trailblazers as they try to fight for that 8 seed. The Masters is underway at Augusta with day one now in the books, and we've got taking a live look at the leaderboard. Sam Burns and Rory McIlroy are tied for first, both -5 under par. Shot a 67 today at Augusta. Coming up on the big show, we're going to be catching up with the voice of your Trailblazers, Travis Demers. What are we going to get into with Travis beyond just the Blazers? How much TV am I going to ask him? You got the Rip City Drive, Brendan Slaughter. And we're back here on the Rip City Drive. Brendan Slaughter here with you guys here on a Thursday afternoon, 5 o'clock. Hope everyone is having a great day so far, wherever you're listening to us, in your car, at home, at the gym, wherever. We love you guys listening to us here on Rip City Radio 620. Appreciate everyone tuning in. You can jump on board, 503-248-0620, or jump on the Rip City Radio YouTube and drop some comments there as well, as we're live on YouTube. Any questions you have, again, 503-248-0620. Getting you guys ready for Portland's matchup against the LA Clippers tomorrow. That's obviously a huge game for your Portland Trailblazers. It will determine who gets the 8th seed. We're going to be talking about that and a whole lot more with Travis Demers here in about 18 minutes. And really happy we got a chance to catch up with Travis. Obviously, he and the team got in very late from San Antonio last night, flying in on the red eye, and was happy that Travis was able to make some time to jump on with us because I love our conversations. Catching up with him, how things have been going on the Blazers side of things, what kind of TV he's been watching in some of his downtime, how Lincoln and Lawson, his boys, are. Always love catching up with TD. So that's going to be coming up in about 17 minutes, folks. And we just got done talking about the Masters, and obviously, you know, we're through it. We're through a full first day at Augusta, and we talked about it at length with PGA Dave back at 420. You can check that interview out at ripcityradio.com. But more than anything, I think it's that's the beauty of Augusta, right? The fact that it's just unpredictable every year. And with the exception of, you know, someone like, you know, Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, kind of guys you'd expect to be at the top, I like that there's some guys after day one that are a bit surprises. There's some guys after day one who've been more disappointments. And, you know, I kind of look at, you know, someone like my guy Bryson. +4, shot a 76 today. He's tied for 56. In the words of Dave, he's got a lot of work to do to work his way out of that and potentially try to follow up on his top 5 finish a year ago. So that's obviously going to be key as well. That's what's going on the Masters side of things. Elsewhere, again, the Portland Trailblazers just with 2 games left in the regular season against the LA Clippers and against the Sacramento Kings. And obviously now it is put up or shut up time, as they like to say. And again, this matchup is going to be pretty close to a true playoff environment in the sense that there's a lot at stake for both these teams. You know, the Clippers win, they get the 8th seed. The Blazers win by way of also taking care of the Kings on Sunday, they'll get the 8th seed. And I think in this particular case, you look at the 7-8 matchup, whoever gets the 8 gets the playing Phoenix in Phoenix on Tuesday. And as a result, that's just one game. Whoever wins that game between Phoenix and or Portland or LA, they get the 7th seed, and they're in. You only got to win one game, and you're in if you're in that 7-8 matchup. If you're in the 9-10 matchup, you have to first win that 9-10 matchup. So let's say the Blazers did lose the Clippers. They would be hosting the Golden State Warriors on Wednesday with Steph Curry back in the lineup. Now, all that to say, the Warriors have not been all that great this year. They still don't have Jimmy Butler, but Steph is still Steph. And, you know, he would still probably be the best player in the matchup in that particular situation. But the Blazers would host a playoff game. They'd have to take down the Warriors, and then they would play the loser of the Phoenix Clippers game, again, assuming the Clippers beat the Blazers, and then they would need to win that game to be the 8th seed. So it's a little kind of if A and B happens, C happens things, then you got to kind of follow along with the details. But the simplest version is this. Blazers beat the Clippers tomorrow. They beat the Kings on Sunday. They're in. They are the 8th seed. And that's where it all comes down to tomorrow night. And again, just kind of taking a closer look at this matchup. The Clippers come in 41-39. The Blazers will come in 40-40. And early on, the early betting line. Let's see if we got a good look at this so far. Doesn't look like this one's quite out yet for this matchup. I expect this to be a pretty close game as far as that goes. Again, Portland is a little bit better against the Western Conference this year than their foes, the Clippers. That's how the tiebreaker scenario. You might be asking yourself, hey, if the Blazers beat the Clippers, Brendan, that's only a 2-2 series split. How do the Blazers win the tiebreaker and become that 8th seed? Well, I'm glad you asked, folks, because after the head-to-head tiebreaker, if the Blazers win tomorrow, the season series will be 2-2 Blazers-Clippers. If two teams are tied and then they split evenly a 4-game series, the next tiebreaker goes to overall record against Western Conference foes. Now, for what that's worth, you look at the LA Clippers. They are currently 24-26, a losing record against the Western Conference. Your Portland Trailblazers, 27-23. That cannot change with 2 games left to go. So if the two teams finish tied, the Blazers will 150% get that tie-breaking situation there. So again, that's something working in Portland's favor, and it's something Chris Burkhardt and I talked about last night on the 5th quarter. Everything is still available for this Trailblazers team that was, on the table ahead of the San Antonio game. Now, did you need a little attaboy from the Oklahoma City Thunder to get there? Absolutely, because if the Clippers had beat the Thunder last night, we would be talking about a completely different situation. But the Clippers, like the Blazers, there's a reason they are a play-in team. They are not a lock-stop championship contending team. The Clippers obviously have been better since their horrible start to the season and have been pretty effective since, but nevertheless, this is still a team with play-in talent and a team on Portland's radar. And Portland played one of their better games of the year when they got that win back on March the 31st. We were talking about it with Michael Holton back in the first hour. And more than anything, that's what it comes down to, is the Trailblazers need to come out with that exact same, mentality. And, going back to that game specifically itself, like we were talking about with Michael, you can't bank on the Blazers being able to shoot the ball as well as they did in that last game against the Clippers, but you certainly can, bank on, like Michael was saying, the 3 E's. And again, Portland took down the Clippers 114-104 back on March the 31st. Drew Holiday led the way for Portland with 30 points. Denny Avdia had 28, 15 from Scoot, 17 from Toumani Camara. And the Blazers made the Clippers work for pretty much everything in this game. Kawhi Leonard finished with 23 points, but Blazers made him 7 of 15. He was 0 of 5 from downtown. He did get to the foul line, but again, you look at something like that. John Collins was effective for the Clips in this game, as was Brook Lopez. I think as I'm looking at this game tomorrow, and if I were to extrapolate it, and let's just say, you were assuming the Blazers were going to play the Clippers, in a true playoff, series, over the course of a series, I would be a little concerned about what Brook Lopez can do to the Blazers defense as a floor spacer. Now, circle back to earlier this year when the Trailblazers lost in Portland to the Los Angeles Clippers. I believe that was the day after Christmas. And that was a game where Brook Lopez, certainly caught fire and was, hitting those 3-point shots downtown. He's later in his career, he's a bit more of a bigger kind of lumbering center, but he can shoot and he can stretch the floor. And at times, we've seen where opposing teams have kind of targeted Donovan Clingan and forced him to kind of come out and guard against 3-point line. Now, conversely, Donovan Clingan's making other teams do that too with how Donovan Clingan's shooting the 3-point shot. But I think that's going to be something where, looking at Tyronn Lue, I think, he is one of the best tacticians in the NBA. And I think far more than that first game where I think there was still plenty of games for things to still be decided. I think the Clippers are going to be much more wired into this game and treating it like a playoff game compared to maybe that game on the end of March where maybe it was kind of like, just another regular season game when we knew the Blazers attacked it with that playoff mentality. I think Ty Lue and his staff are going to have the Clippers ready to roll. And again, I think not only, like Michael said, is containing Kawhi Leonard and, again, putting Toumani Camara all over him, putting Sidy Cissoko all over him, Chris Murray, maybe even some Matisse Thybulle, maybe even some, Robert Williams, and when Kawhi comes into the paint, kind of flash at him a little bit. There Kawhi Leonard is going to take this team as far as Kawhi Leonard can take this team. And I think, no disrespect to anybody else on the Clippers roster, but I think Portland would like their odds if they can contain and that's no easy task. This is a guy who, let's not forget, is a handful of years removed now, but, 6-7 years ago, was the best hired gun in the NBA and took the championship to Toronto. This guy can make a difference, especially when he's healthy, and he's healthy. And that's the other thing. Kawhi's finally healthy and kind of on this little revenge tour. I think kind of trying to show everybody a thing or two with, the whole drama before the season came out with the whole LLC and all that jazz. I think the NBA is still kind of looking into that. But nevertheless, Kawhi Leonard's been playing some great ball this year. And I go back to, this game itself, Darius Garland is going to be questionable for the Clippers. He's been out, kind of dealing with that toe injury kind of day to day. Whether he plays is big because Darius Garland gave them 20 big points, 4 assists, and 2 rebounds that last matchup with the Blazers. He can fill it up. And, conversely, what about Shaedon Sharpe and Vit Krejci? Almost said City Sissoko there. Going to take a quick look here, folks. We'll do a little producing on the fly here and see if the Blazers PR has put out an updated look at injuries for tomorrow. I would expect it to be relatively soon, and boom, here it is, folks. Some great news. Injury report 410 versus the LA Clippers 18 minutes ago from the Trailblazers PR. I love we get to break some news here on the show. Out, Jeremy Grant and Damian Lillard. No big surprises there. Like I said earlier, we expected Jeremy to be out for a minute. Same with Dame, obviously. But, doubtful for last game, questionable for this game are Vit Krejci and Shaedon Sharpe. So, again, like we discussed with Michael back in that first hour, this has kind of been the process of how we've seen guys come back, how the Blazers have handled, the medical staff's handled guys coming back. They will be listed as doubtful first, and then they'll work their way up to questionable. And maybe they'll play off a questionable. Maybe one guy plays, maybe one doesn't. But at this rate, with where Vit and Shaedon are progressing and already being questionable heading into this matchup against the Clippers, on one hand, I'd love to have them both. If you have Vit and Shaedon available for this game, I think your odds to beat the Clippers just jumped exponentially. Vit, career 40% three-point shooter. I know it hasn't quite hit in Portland, but you don't forget how to shoot. That guy's going to come back and hit some big-time shots. I can guarantee you that. And then Shai's a walking bucket, folks. He is a bucket. And Michael Holton described it as gravity earlier, the gravity that Shaedon Sharpe, pulls. And then you talk about Denny's gravity and Toumani Kamara's ever-growing gravity, as we're talking about that back in the first hour on how opponents are starting to be like, hey, we got to run him off the three-point line. So all that to say, I think it's going to be very interesting. And now all of a sudden that I hear that Vit and Shaedon are questionable for tomorrow, my eyes kind of light up. I'm like, you don't say. You don't say. Because I tell you, if Shaedon Sharpe and Vit Krejci, let's just say for the sake of argument, they're not back against the Clippers, and let's say they decide to be uber cautious and they're not back against the Kings. What this tells me is there is almost a guaranteed chance that we're going to see these guys in the games that truly matter, whether that be Friday's game against Clippers, Sunday's game against the Kings, or if we get into next week and we're talking about the play-in scenarios. If the Blazers have those guys back, even if it's just next week, that would be enormous for their playoff efforts. And I think it's great because, again, when Shaedon went down, I wasn't optimistic about necessarily seeing him again this year. This brings a smile to my eyes, or smile to my face. Smile to my eyes. Come on, Brendan, speak. Smile to my face because, man, watching Shaedon Sharpe play basketball, that is a lot of fun, folks. We'll go ahead and take a quick break here on the Rip City Drive because you know what else is a lot of fun? Catching up with your voice of the Trailblazers. Travis Demers going to be joining us on the Rip City Drive next. Keep it locked. Rip City Radio 620, Rip City Drive with Brendan Slaughter. Back here on the Rip City Drive on a Thursday afternoon, Brendan Slaughter here with y'all. Pleased to welcome back to the program a good friend and one-time host of this very show, your play-by-play voice of the Portland Trailblazers, Travis Demers, back on the show, back on the Rip City Drive. TD, what's good, my brother? How you doing?
I'm good, man. It's a sunny day. It's almost 80 degrees. Postseason basketball is coming to Moda Center. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, man. I'm great. Obviously, I got to take advantage a little bit of that sunshine before I came in today. Chad called me this morning. He's like, hey, I need you to host again. He's like, okay. And we were chatting back and forth. He's like, I think I can get you Travis for 520. I'm like, do it, because I always love catching up with you, TD, and I got to start with, how are Lincoln and Lawson, man? How are they enjoying this nice weather?
They're great. Just dropped them off at their mom's house a little bit ago, and we went to the book fair after school today.
Nice.
Came home, read some books, enjoyed the sunshine a little bit. They're great.
No, that's awesome, man. I remember the book fairs. Those were good days, man. Those were good days.
The book fair is the best.
Yeah. No, I remember it being a lot of fun doing that in elementary school, man. That was like something you look forward to.
Yeah. They've got and the other thing too is now our and I'm not saying this in any way to be negative at all. Things are good. But the family situation we have now, I came from parents who have been married for 50-plus years. So
sure.
I was not used to this. But now that, their parents are not together, they get to go to the book fair twice. Once with their mom and once with their dad. So they get to go get two sets of books. So extra for them.
No, that's a win-win. And, like I said, as a kid that knows a little something about that, TD, I can certainly understand where that comes from for sure. And it's honestly, it's just nice to catch up with you, man, too. And I really appreciate it, because I know you came in on the red eye last night. Couldn't have been an early comeback home time from San Antonio last night. So thanks again for jumping on, TD. And ultimately now I just kind of want to start here. We had Michael Holton on back in the first hour, and we were trying to kind of determine it between the two of us. This is the biggest game at Moda since when, if you were to say? Tomorrow night.
Game 6 of the 2021 NBA playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere in that playoff series against Denver. And when you kind of extrapolate that and realize it's been that long with a big-time game of consequence at Moda Center, I think it's going to be electric tomorrow, TD.
Yeah, I think so, too. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. And you also got to think about this because, that was the biggest game at Moda Center. But there were no fans in the building, right? That was the season actually, by that time, they were allowing 10% of the building to be filled with fans. So for that series, games 3, 4, and 6, you had, a couple thousand fans in the house because of the COVID rules.
What a time. Again, Travis, I would like someone who maybe wasn't around, try to explain that to somebody who didn't have any prior knowledge. A sports stadium, only about 5% full. That's just still crazy.
Well, it would be like somebody trying to explain to you when you turned 18 that, when I was 18, I could have gotten drafted and sent to Vietnam whether I liked it or not.
Yeah,
and it's just something that unless you lived it, you can't really understand.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. And along that point, to your point, I think, and it was something I discussed with Michael, I think Blazer fans are starved, Travis. They're dying for something like this and kind of get that postseason mojo back. And earlier in the show, I was talking about how when I was in college, in the prime Damon CJ years in the late 2010s, my buddy and I, we were broke college kids, but we saved and scrimped and made sure we got to go to one playoff game every year. And, as we know, the Blazers were a postseason regular, and it wasn't like it was always, go in the Western Conference Finals or everything, but there was just something special about the postseason. And I'm really happy Portland's going to have that. And you combine that with the momentum of the new ownership and everything else, it just seems like there's some good vibes going with the Trailblazers right now, TD.
Yeah, and to your point, that's one of the things I was alluding to a minute ago is that, whether you thought the previous ownership group was heading in the right direction or not, that's not relevant. What's relevant is, and by the way, I'm not just saying this because I work for them. I really do believe that Jody Allen did a good job with this team in a lot of ways. But there was purgatory because you knew the team was going to be sold at some point. Now that has happened, now this Rip City Rising group has taken over, and Tom Dundon and Sheil Tile and that group has spoken publicly, and they've kind of at the very least set some ground level expectations. I think fans now have a clearer or different view of the future. So knowing that those things are in place and there is a direction, whatever direction it is, there is a direction. You can enjoy this playoff run and success and postseason, whatever it is, in a different way because there's no more what ifs in terms of who is going to take over this team.
It's entirely true. And I think, as well as everything you just said, Travis, I didn't think it was ever the most realistic, but I think having, this situation calm and realize, no, there's not a risk the Trailblazers are going to leave. And I think there were a lot of fans that it just naturally was something there when you go through a transition and then hearing, Sheil, as you mentioned, kind of be like, hey, I wouldn't have been a part of this if that was on the table, so to speak. I think just all of that is really reassuring. You talk about how Tom was pretty blunt, like, hey, I don't really like to lose. I think that was something that, Trailblazer fans were excited to see after some developmental years. So, again, we don't know how this is going to shake out, how tomorrow's matchup or Sunday's matchup or the play-in, whether they get in the playoffs is going to shake out. But I think there's no question, Travis, when you consider where this season started, particularly where it was after the first game, but before the second game, and to where we are now, and then all the injuries and everything else, I still think this is a year you can be quite proud of as the Blazers kind of going from that out of the play-in picture to firmly in that play-in picture.
Look, man, it was a rocky year. In a lot of ways, it was a really rocky year. It started with, the news that Scoot had a torn hamstring on media day. And we didn't know he was going to miss 50 games, but that's where it started. And then everything that happened with Chauncey Billups and then having the third most injuries in the league this year. But to your point, do you think it's fair to say that the general consensus from this team about this team from the outside was that if they're fully healthy, they're probably a 500 team?
Yeah.
Give or take a couple of games?
Yeah, no, I think so.
Considering that, Brendan, with the fact that did happen at the beginning of the year, and you have a guy who is not supposed to be an NBA head coach this year being an NBA head coach, and the third most injuries in the entire league. I mean, they have averaged 5 rotation players out per game for 80 games, and a couple more games coming. Good teams usually can't withstand that. So for all of those things to happen, and this team to still basically be, in terms of wins and losses, where I think most people thought they would be if they were fully healthy, minus Dame, I think they've done a damn good job, and there's a lot to be proud of. Oh,
most certainly, and just doubling down on that, I think I remember we talked, I don't know, Travis, probably about a month and a half ago, and you were kind of telling me the story around New Year's and how close the team was, as I kind of remember now, and I just think back to what's transpired since, and I would just. Anybody in the NBA, Travis, I would like to know how many people could, or how many coaches or teams could lose what the Blazers lost this year, especially at key positions like early in the year when the Blazers didn't have anybody to play point guard, things of that nature. And then you put in Tiago Splitter, who, Chris Burkhardt and I were talking about it a little bit on the fifth quarter the other day, because there's a few Blazers fans that seem to be a little critical, and I don't necessarily know where that's coming from, because I'm like, how much better could you have asked him to be with the situation he's given? I think Tiago's been awesome, all considering, this year.
Yeah, I think if you look at it from a broad picture, the way I just laid it out, I think you can say that he has been successful. And I think where fans are getting frustrated are some of the little things where, okay, this could have been better, that could have been better. Or they look at other situations and say, well, why can't we have that? Why do the Blazers turn the ball over more than anybody else in the league and it's not close? Why do we have trouble, making free throws in key situations? Last night they were 5 for 10. Why have there been so many issues with inbounds plays? And when you look at that, I think it's easy to point to the coach for that, because who else are you going to point to? Well, some of those situations, the coach isn't the one shooting the free throws. And
True.
It's not like these guys don't know how to do it. Denny Avdia is an 80+% free throw shooter for his career, and he was 1 for his first 4 last night. That's not coaching.
Right.
But I definitely understand the criticism, because I'm not saying it's warranted. I understand where it's coming from, because when something happens that you don't like, you got to blame somebody.
Yep.
Right. And you look at the Denver game. You blow a 14-point lead to open up the fourth quarter, and they have more assists than you have field goals attempted in that period.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's frustrating. Okay, well, why did that happen? You played a historically great offense, literally one of the best offenses statistically in the history of the NBA. That lead was never safe. There was never a chance it was going to be safe. Were there some officiating things? Yeah, but you probably shouldn't have been in that situation to begin with. Some of it could be inexperienced coaching, and I think Tiago would agree with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, everybody's got to be a first-time head coach at some point, but it's growth for everybody. I think in the broad picture, he has done a tremendous job. But I also think in the nitty-gritty, getting into those details, yeah, there absolutely could be some things that he did better and has done better and will do better. But I think they would all agree with that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Catching up with Travis Demers, the voice of your Portland Trailblazers here on Rip City Radio 620. TD, appreciate the time for sure. A couple more things I want to get your thoughts on. And before
I got all the time for you, man.
I love it, my man. Like I said, I could talk to you for hours. But one thing I want to get into before we dive into the Clippers game, Travis, and that was a little bit of news that made it across my wire just before I brought you on. And that was Vit Krejci and Shaedon Sharpe upgraded to questionable for tomorrow's matchup against the Clippers. You know, I can't help but have a grin go, who knows if they play in this game or if it's against the Kings or if it's potentially even next week in the play-in. But the, kind of process and seeing how this has gone, the theory that Shaedon could be back. I mean, when he was, ruled out, I didn't think we'd maybe see him again this year. That would be a huge swoon. And then Vit, obviously a 40% three-point shooter's no bad thing either. I think those two guys would be huge whenever they can get them back.
Yeah, the concern that I have with that, Brendan, to your point, do we see them Friday? Do we see them Sunday? With Shaedon, he's been pretty good about picking up where he left off, and he has been practicing. He's been wanting to get back out there for a while.
Love to hear it.
But when you have some continuity and you have a player who's been out, I think his last game was, February 9th, somewhere around there, February 6th against Memphis.
Been that long?
The two back-to-back games against Memphis. Yeah, it's been over 2 months.
Wow. Okay. See, time flies, brother. It really does.
Yeah. So when you reintroduce somebody back in, there's a little bit of a learning curve there and an adjustment period. So is that something that you want to do in the biggest game that your franchise had in 5 years, or do you wait until Sunday? But then at the same time, you think about this. In this stretch, the Blazers were, 5 games under 500? I think they were, 22 and 27, something like that.
Sounds right,
so
yeah.
Since then, they're, 18 and 13, somewhere around there. They've been missing 2 of their 3 leading scorers for the better part, if not all of that stretch, whether it be Denny, Shaedon, Jeremy. So you've really only had one, if any of those guys on some nights. To get another one back, this team needs all the offensive punch that they can get. So the thought of having him back, I really want to see it, and I want to see what he can do in clutch situations because he hasn't had them before.
Right. No, and just kind of building on that, TD, a lot of similar thoughts, right? Like, now that you mentioned that, I'm like, darn, I thought it was, just beginning of March. But time flies as far as a guy being out. But to your point, I mean, yeah, I think it's a key thing because there have been times in the last, I'd say more so in the last couple weeks where you've had guys like Jrue Holiday, guys like Toumani Camara, in addition to where we saw Denny take that load for most of the year, and Denny still does, but we've seen those other guys be like, hey, the team needs points, I need to go get my own. And particularly I've noticed Jrue and Toumani Camara really been great at that recently, Travis.
Yeah, Drew's been awesome. I mean, you look at that stretch where he had back-to-back games where he made 7 threes.
Yeah.
He's had more games with 20 or more points this season than he did in his 2 years in Boston combined. And a lot of it is just, it's the role. It's not that he's having a resurgence to his career. He's just playing a different role here. And when Denny was out, they were winning games against some pretty good teams at that point because Jeremy Grant and Jrue Holiday were coming up with big plays. Jeremy Grant's been really good this year.
Yeah.
Jrue Holiday is shooting just under 40% from 3. He had a double-double last night with rebounds.
Yeah.
He's had more double-doubles this year than he had the last couple of years combined. He's been a really important player on this team. So the veterans have been stepping up. And to your point about Camara, going into last night, he was, 53% from 3 over his last 8 games. And it's not like he was taking 1 or 2 threes a night.
No.
He was taking a lot of threes. And his shooting has come around. You knew it would. He had that rough stretch to begin March where he was at right around 30% for the first 3 weeks of March.
Sure.
He picked it up, and he's been terrific of late. So to your point, yeah, this team does have a number of guys, and I think when you look at it at a championship caliber team, and you say, okay, we need a guy who's a closer. Who are those guys? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jokic, I think Anthony Edwards is that guy. Jason Tatum, Jalen Brunson. There are a number of those guys around the league. Do the Blazers have that guy? And I think the answer right now is no. But because you have a number of guys and you ride the hot hand, that's something that's okay. And that's something that I think Thiago Splitter has done very well. You look at the game in L.A. against the Clippers down the stretch.
Huge game.
And Chris Murray was playing closing minutes in a situation where he usually doesn't because he was playing out of his mind, and they needed that kind of energy and effort down the stretch. And it's those kinds of little things that are what help you win games and win important games. So I think that there's just a lot of things that are a little unusual about this team, are frustrating, but then some other things that are outstanding. It's just a unique team. It's really one of the most unique teams that I have seen in my 20-plus years around this team.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And then obviously going back to the conversation, we had back when you were sharing, the New Year's thing and how close this team is and, how you've been there's always one guy who's maybe not liked by the rest of the team or has issues or what, and you're there's none of that. And I think that's awesome because you don't see that a lot in the NBA anymore. But, kind of continuing on this point with the Clippers, Travis, you mentioned that game back on March 31st. I thought that was one of Portland's better games in recent memory. That game was awesome from start to finish. My thought on that game is I think the Blazers treated it more like a playoff game than the Clippers, whether that was 50-50 balls, the hustle, just kind of the little things. I don't even know if necessarily Tyronn Lue and his staff treated it kind of the way that the Blazers had been these games against the Clippers are so big. Now as we enter tomorrow, I do think we're going to get, a team in the Clippers who do have some veteran savviness kind of approach it with that kind of playoff mindset. And to that, you were kind of talking about Thiago earlier, the matchup with Ty Lue and Thiago, going to be fascinating tomorrow because Ty Lue's one of the best tacticians there is in the NBA, TD.
Yeah, I do think Ty Lue is a very good coach. And to your point, the Blazers treated it like a playoff game. Did the Clippers? I think it was in their mind, but now you come in, and this game absolutely is because the winner of this game gets 2 cracks at getting into the playoffs. The loser has to win 2 games. And you think about this, going into that game a couple of weeks ago, the Blazers had beaten the Clippers twice since Kawhi joined the team in the 2019-20 season. They were 2-20 against the Clippers in that stretch. And they played that game with balls.
They did.
They were all over the place. They were very clearly had the better effort. And Kawhi Leonard was taken out of the game a bit, coming out to have Drew Holiday defend him to start the game. Their bench has been really good in this stretch where they've won a lot of games. Benedict Mathurin was 2 for 7 in that game. He had 4 points. He was terrible. And he has been terrific. And they didn't get a whole lot from, their bench, and that was key. And those big plays, and every run that the Clippers made, they never cut it closer than 8 in the fourth quarter.
Right.
And the Blazers were able to win that game by 10. Every time you felt that lead was going to disappear, it didn't, and they pushed it back the other way. And that's not what happened in the game against Denver the other night. So those are the kinds of things that they need to do. And they can't make the kind of mistakes they did last night or they did on Monday against Denver. You have to play in those kind of games. You've got to play a near-perfect game.
It's true. I mean, because even just going back to these, you mentioned the matchups against San Antonio and Denver, TD, and for very different reasons, they're both frustrating. Because you mentioned Denver, that was a game that throughout, you talked about it, Travis. You're I believe still to this day you have not called a regular season win in Denver, correct?
Regular season, correct.
So I remember when you
regular season game in Denver since you were in high school.
Yeah, and that's kind of crazy. And right? So you think about that, and going in, I'm okay, I don't know exactly what Portland's going to do, but they came out and played so well, and you knew that onslaught would come. But I think maybe it surprised Antonio game, and without Wemby and Castle, that's a game where I think you kind of have to take advantage. And I don't think, maybe the Blazers didn't quite have their best A game last night. How do you think they kind of flush those two tough, kind of maybe emotional losses on the road and put it all to the Clippers tomorrow night?
Well, look, I'll say this. The Spurs are 12-5 without Wemby.
Yeah,
they're a deep team. They're a really good team. Carter Bryant, who's shooting 31% from three going in, was 5 of 6 from beyond the arc. Okay, and the Blazers come out and start 3 for 14. They weren't hitting their shots, and they turned the ball over way too many times. I don't look at that and say that was a missed opportunity for the Blazers because the Spurs, even without those two guys, are still really good. The Spurs were still, 4.5 point favorites in that game, and they were the better team last night. So how do you flush it? I think you recalibrate because in the big picture, those games meant absolutely nothing. Yeah. Even if they won those games, you don't beat the Clippers tomorrow, you're not the 8 seed. You're still the 9 seed. This was all about Friday night. And yeah, you want to be riding good momentum, but at the same time, if you're going to make mistakes, you want to get them out of the way before that game too.
Yeah.
So everything comes down to tomorrow night, and then you're going to play a Sacramento team on Sunday that is not trying to beat anybody. So that's the game that you better win.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to tomorrow night. And I think refocusing themselves on that game the way that they did the first time they played the Clippers is what they need to do, and I think they'll be able to do that.
Couldn't agree more. And again, TD, I certainly like their odds in this matchup, especially, again, we'll see what happens with Vit Krejci and Shaedon Sharpe being listed as questionable for that matchup. And even too, I'll be curious to see on the Clippers side if Darius Garland's able to go. He's been, day-to-day with his toe injury as well, so lots of interesting...
Yeah, I think he just set out that last night because it was the second night of a back-to-back, so I would expect him to go.
Yeah, so again, another key piece there, and obviously we'll be keeping tabs on that. But TD, I would be remiss if we got through the segment. Obviously, before we do, tune in to Travis Demers, 7 o'clock tomorrow night, biggest game of the year at Moda Center. But I'd be remiss, Travis, if I had you on and we didn't catch up with some TV. So, again, since we have last talked, I know you like to always catch up on your shows when you're on the road. But again, just to kind of set the stage, because I can't remember where we last left off, did you finish season 2 of Landman? Or still working on that?
Oh, yeah. I feel like the second it was over, I started watching it, and I finished it in 2 or 3 days. Fantastic.
Okay, beautiful. Because I don't know if you've known, but we've managed to get our guy Chad Doing into a little bit of the Taylor Sheridan universe. He's like, Brendan, do you know about this Landman? I'm like, oh, Chad, do I know about Landman? Then Tulsa King, same kind of thing. And I'm like, I think we might be turning Chad into a little bit of a Taylor Sheridan fan here, TD.
Yeah, you know what? I'm all good with that because, especially with Tulsa King, he loves Sly Stallone more than anybody I've ever met. And the fact that he didn't jump on that immediately was shocking.
Oh, I know, right? So it was just like, oh, Brendan, do you know how good this show? I'm like, yeah, Chad. I'm like, it's pretty great. But no, all jokes aside, I wanted to know, have you ventured yet into the new Casey-led series, the Why Marshalls?
Marshalls.
Yes. Have you ventured into that yet?
No, because I don't want to have to wait around for another episode of anything.
Yep.
So I wait for it to be over, and then I start it.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing. I think there's another 3 or 4 episodes left, something like that.
Yeah,
so when that's over, then I will start it. I just watched that Something Very Bad is going to happen on Netflix. Trippy.
Okay.
Not something I would usually watch, but I liked it.
Sure.
I've been watching The Last Thing He Said to Me. Really liked that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So there's definitely some good stuff out there. I'm excited to watch Marshalls, even though it's a CBS show, which those aren't usually quite as good. But I will wait for. Not that it's CBS specifically, but it's on network television.
Right. I mean, there's going to
I'm wait for that to be done before I start it.
Yeah, there's a few tweaks with it. I'll just say I'm not going to give anything away, but early on you can kind of tell it has more of a CBS procedural vibe. But me and my brother were all into it because it's got a lot of familiar characters. Did you watch Did you watch the Madison with Kurt Russell, Michelle Pfeiffer?
No, I don't think I've heard of that.
Okay, so that was a limited series that Taylor Sheridan dropped, I want to say a month ago. So stars Kurt Russell, Michelle Pfeiffer, not exactly in the Yellowstone connected universe, but set in Montana too. I'd say throw it on your list. It's only 6 episodes for the first kind of limited season, and it had some pretty good reviews early on. Definitely a bit more of a heartbreaker, but that, and then I wanted to tell you too, Travis, that we're a little under a month until we get the Beth and Rip show. I heard May 10th for that.
That's when it's going to start?
Yeah. Yep.
Is there a name for that show yet?
Dutton Ranch.
Okay, I'm in.
Yep,
I didn't know that was coming out. I just haven't paid a whole lot of attention. Half the time, I just wait for you to tell me what's coming out.
See, no, that's why I said, man. I knew we had to catch up on some TV. I know you're busy.
Thank you for following through on that for me.
Oh, of course, man. You know I live to please, TD. But yeah, no, I'll have to get your thoughts on some more stuff. We're definitely running out of time, so I got to let you go so I can maintain clock integrity for the boss. But TD, I appreciate you, my man. Thanks for coming on. Everyone, tune into him tomorrow. Travis, you're the best.
Thanks, Brendan. Appreciate you, man.
All right, folks. He is Travis Demers. We went a little bit long there with TD, so we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and wrap up the Rip City Drive. welcoming you back into the Rip City Drive. Final segment of the show as we're getting you guys ready for Portland's matchup against the LA Clippers tomorrow. Make sure you stay locked in. We're going to have wall-to-wall coverage all day. We'll have the Rip City Drive with Chad Dewey.